Live from Studio B at the Beach Street Yacht Club on the first day of our summer, Julia.
Indeed.
21st of June, actually the solstice was yesterday, show number 720. Hamish is standing by in Auckland. We had a connection, but we've lost the Skype connection. We'll go back to Hamish in a minute. We'll get this show on the road. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. My co-host, Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, is here as usual, Julia Vedikin. I trust you are well.
I am.
That's it?
I am.
That's it?
I'm trying to get used to summer.
The Tom and Julia Show. We're back at it for our, 720th bloody show. As something that's near and dear to all of our hearts, the 12 meters there, courtesy of the 12-meter Yacht Club and more, 12-meter Class Association. We're going to get Hamish hooked up, we hope, in a moment, because we're going to put him on right at the beginning of the show as our co-host. We had him on for a second, then somebody ran into a telephone pole, Julia, somewhere between us and Auckland, and we'll get him back on because he's got a slideshow. I'll show you the cover slide here. That's one of, I think 50 slides about classic yachting in New Zealand. This is the show that he gave in Helsinki in Finland, a couple months ago, and by all accounts, people who were there said it was just a fabulous show. So we'll get him on in a sec. In fact, here's a picture of him. He doesn't know I have a photo by Richard Gladwell of him yachting aboard Rainbow. That's the classic yacht that he and Brad Butterworth and a few others own down there. So when we get him on here in a sec, it may be during our first video because I'll try one more time to see if we can raise him here while we're chattering away, Julia.
Good idea.
And on the other computer. And we don't know what's happened to Hamish, but we have a lot of people on here in the meantime. The Rick Bannerow is on from Edgartown, Mass. Is that race week out there? Rick, you're not in Newport for the start of the Bermuda race, which is just wrapped up here. Restream, greetings all. That's you, isn't it, Julia?
It is.
Greetings from sunny Estes Park, Colorado, says Joe Holtzman. Greg Phillips down on the Gold Coast of Oz. Your Coach Yourself to Win. The intro is getting longer. Well, that was longer today because I was futzing with the computer to try to get Hamish hooked up. I wonder if Microsoft or they own Skype. Maybe we'll put Hamish on by Zoom if we can't get him on by.
Yeah.
Here he's dialing us now. Let's see if we can get him in here.
Oh, good.
And in the meantime, who else is on here? Blake Middleton. Julia being well is absolutely key. She is always well. Chris Fury, Chris Exley, Jody Shields down in Wanji outside of Sydney. Steve Gruber, Coach Yourself to Win. That, of course, there's Hamish. We got an image of Hamish.
Yay.
Let's see if we have audio from Hamish. Hamish? Hamish, can you hear us? We can see him.
Yeah.
I think we can hear him if he talks, but he's apparently not hearing us, which is not a good setup. He put his earbuds in when we were doing the tech check, and now he apparently can't hear us, but I am sending him audio. Hamish!
No, I can't.
Hamish! Now, maybe it's my problem here. Don't go away, Hamish. Don't go away, Hamish. Okay, we're going to see what the problem is here. But this is live television from half a world away. And Hamish, I don't know what is going on with the audio to Hamish. Let's see what the problem is, Julia. Let's see what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
As I go on the Skype settings here, audio, visual, and camera and audio, Rodecaster Pro. This is Curtonic. Okay, we'll get Hamish sorted out during the break. We'll get him sorted out during not a commercial break, but when we get to a video here.
Yeah.
And I'll get the audio sorted out. Julia!
Sir!
What are we celebrating today?
The solstice.
It is. It is the June solstice. We don't call it, because we're ecumenical, we don't call it the summer solstice or the winter solstice anymore. We call it the June solstice because, of course, up here in the northern hemisphere,
it's summer.
And that's our longest day of the year and shortest night. And down in the southern hemisphere, where Ted Ryman and Hamish and a number of others of you are, it is the shortest day of the year and the longest night. But there is a special holiday that we're going to get to in a moment in Scandinavia and elsewhere. But summer officially arrived with the earliest solstice in more than 2 centuries.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yes, I'd heard that earlier today. Summer officially arrives in the northern hemisphere on Thursday, so it arrived here yesterday. The earliest start to the season in over 2 centuries.
Good heavens.
The summer solstice, the exact moment when Earth's North Pole is most tilted towards the sun, happens at 4:51, or happened yesterday at 4:51 Eastern Time, so 1:51 our time yesterday afternoon, according to our National Weather Service. Now, what goes on in Spain, for example, and I was going to ask Hamish because we were neighbors in Valencia for those years leading up to the Cup in 07 and then beyond to 2010 when we had the second Cup there. And in Spain, the traditional celebration is to go to the beach. It's a big midsummer party, and in other countries as well, but particularly in Spain along the south coast, is the celebration in honor of St. John. St. John the Baptist, San Juan Catalan. Got Hamish checking in here again, and we'll see if we can get him on in a sec. But this thing in Spain, it's common in many areas of the country. In some areas, bonfires are traditionally named tequeos, which means people of the dance. Bonfires. Can you hear us, Hamish? Which means I hear my audio coming back from him now.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Hamish?
Yeah, I can hear. Well, I can't actually. I'm not getting anything through Skype.
Okay, well, we're going to work on you in a sec. I don't know what is going on, but we're going to work on you.
In somewhere.
We got a software switch, or we got something going on up here, Hamish, that is not correct. And we will get that fixed in a moment, one way or another, because we are hearing you, but you are not hearing us. But let me continue with this thing about Spain, and then I'm going to run a video and see if we can get Hamish sorted out. Don't sign off, Hamish. But these parties are organized usually at beaches where bonfires are lit and set of fireworks displays usually take place, and a set of fireworks. And on the Med Coast, especially in Catalonia, where Barcelona is, of course, and Valencia, special foods such as cocoa de San Juan, which is how you say in Valenciano, how you say St. John, of course, are also served on this occasion.
Do we know what that is?
At midsummer.
No, but I mean, what's Cocoa de St. John?
I don't know. We used to drink it on the beach. Nicolo Porzio, our good mutual friend of Hamish's and mine, our families, we'd go over to the beach and you'd set the bonfire. You'd hope it would burn down because you didn't want to be jumping over the bonfire while it was raging.
Yeah.
And you'd jump over it 3 times. 1, 2, 3, or some multiple of 3. You could do it 6 or 9, I guess, but that's the good luck. Ward off the devils, the witches, jump over the bonfire at the beach 3 times on Midsummer's Night, the festival. And it's a pagan festival, really. It's been adopted by the Christians to make it St. Jean.
Right.
So that's what goes on. Now let's talk about what goes on in Scandinavia, particularly Sweden, Midsummer's Night, but also in Norway and elsewhere. It is a big deal. And we had the pleasure of doing the 12-meter world, speaking of 12s, up in Luleå in northern Sweden. I think it was 88 or 89. Ed Worley may remember that. And we had a Midsummer's Night race that started at midnight. It was this time of year, this week in June. Did some day racing, and then at midnight on Midsummer's Night, the 20th or 21st, whatever day it was, we started at midnight and raced till about 3 in the morning, came in and had the kippers and had all the stuff and the akavit. And every woman...
Yes.
Now, Luleå is way up by the Arctic Circle. It's just south of the Arctic Circle in very northern Sweden. Mm-hmm. And I think every woman, every girl within 100 Ks came because there were all these young buck 12-meter sailors there.
Who could stay away?
Who could stay away? Would have you been there?
Not in Sweden, but...
if you were one of these young girls within 100 Ks of Luleå, you would have been there.
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No. But I've had great times at Midsummers in Finland. Well,
you have spent a lot of time in Finland.
Yep.
What was your old friend's name up there?
Vanus.
Auntie Vanus?
Auntie Vanus.
Long gone, right?
Yes.
You've outlived not only all your old friends, but all your doctors, too.
I know.
Your doctors.
Oh.
Well, let's look a little bit at what they do in Sweden, and then we'll see if we can get Hamish hooked up while we are in this nice video, couple-minute video of Midsummer in Sweden.
Time to forget about Swedish minimalism and embrace our pagan roots. It's midsummer. Marking the official start of summer, midsummer is one of Sweden's most important holidays. This is a celebration you don't want to miss. Let me give you a few pointers on how to get the most out of your Swedish midsummer experience. This is a day when we can let our hair down, laugh a little too loud, and dance like no one is watching. So, if you want to truly take part in the celebration, join us as we dance and hop around the maypole and do the small frogs dance. The midsummer meal is something we Swedes look forward to all year long. Pickled herring, buttery new potatoes with dill, cured salmon, and strawberries and cream. Go on, dig into this summertime smorgasbord. No one's judging you. You might think vodka is our national spirit, but it's the flavored akvavit called snaps that is part of our holiday celebrations. However, just as important as the snaps are the snapsvisor, or drinking songs. Join in as we sing some of our favorites like Helan går, which means drink the whole thing. Helan går. Skål! If you're still on the hunt for that special someone, make sure to pick 7 flowers and place them under your pillow after the day's festivities have ended. Folklore says you'll then dream of your true love. Now that I've told you all you need to know to make the most out of your midsummer celebrations, you are ready to join the fun. Practice your frog dance, brush up on your snapsvisor, and we'll see you soon.
There we go. Click a few more buttons, Julia. Just as we ended that video, we got Hamish hooked up. He's standing by live in Auckland. There he is. Let's see if the AV sync is any good. Hamish, how are you?
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Tom.
The AV sync is so-so, so it's not too bad. Can you hear us okay?
Roger, all good here.
Okay,
Oh,
well,
lovely.
Julia had to knock on the door and get the control room.
We got to
Get the control room and not tell them we're hooked up. They'll know. They'll see it on all the monitors. Hamish, we've just done a thing about Midsummer's Night and this pagan holiday you and I have been joking about last night and today on the Tech Check. But do you remember, I showed that bonfire in Spain. Do you remember going with Niccolo Porzio and his clan down to the beach and Puthol and jumping over the bonfire 3 times and trying not to burn your keister or your feet, and then wishing the witches away? Or what was that all about?
Yeah, well, it must be an old pagan thing. Of course, in this part of the world, we're the opposite to you. So we're celebrating the winter solstice. So for us, we're celebrating the rebirth of the sun in the old pagan festival, lighting a fire also.
David James just said, as usual in Scandinavia in midsummers, Norwegian brings the fish, the Dane brings the aquavit, and the Swede brings his brother.
Okay, well, it's that time of year. It's I'm in depression now because, as Julia knows, the days I always talk about the days are getting longer and longer, and of course, not anymore.
Now we have to put up with them going short.
But not for a while. Not really. Not noticeably.
Oh, last night it was light here at 8:30 at night.
Big deal. In Michigan, it's light until almost 11 o'clock because we have double day. Okay, enough of all this talk about time. Hamish is standing by in Auckland. We want to thank all of our FOSI, and especially those who are patrons who've joined via patreon.com/join/sailing illustrated. We're celebrating them like we're celebrating the summer or the June to be ecumenical solstice. And we appreciate all of you very much. We're delighted to have Hamish on here as our guest host, our guest co-host. And that worked out well the other day when we had John Emmett on as our guest co-host. So I think maybe this becomes a thing, Hamish. You're our second guest co-host, and just to have you on, you're okay for a couple hours, right?
Yeah, I've got to go sailing. I've got to leave about 10:30 my time, which is about 2 hours from now. So I have a midwinter sail.
Sailing? What is sailing?
Well, come on, you should be in the thick of it in the summer up there now.
Well, we are. The truth is we are, and we appreciate you very much coming on. I can even put a lower third on. I've got your lower third on, so we can see that Hamish is in Auckland and yada yada. And let's get to a few other pieces of news that I thought we'd get Hamish's comments and commentary on going forward here. A Bravo Zulu, first of all. Hamish and I have done some ceremonies there over the years. We had a couple of America's Cup meetings. I can't remember what else, but this is our twin, the Gestad Yacht Club. We count this as one of our twinners, one of our reciprocal clubs, close on sister brother clubs, and that is the YCM, the Yacht Club de Monaco, which this year is celebrating a double celebration, actually. It's 10 years ago that, remember, they tore that beautiful clubhouse down and built an even more beautiful clubhouse, and the family gathered to attend the inauguration of that new building that was designed by Norman Foster, or now Lord Foster. Mm-hmm. This year, the traditional summer cocktail was held earlier this week on the 17th. It was the perfect opportunity to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the clubhouse and the 40 years that His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco has been president of that club. And he shows up. He's been there a handful of times where I've been there for some event, one event or another. And he's very approachable and very nice. And I hosted him my wife and I actually hosted him back in '84. Wow. At the Olympics. Mm-hmm. He also came through. Did you see him in Valencia? Did he come to your base? Did you have Prince Albert there at Alinghi's base during the Cup, Hamish?
Look, I can't recall immediately. I recall Juan Carlos being there, and we did have a number of people cycling, sort of circling through to the base.
He's, to be fair, he's more of a power boater, as most of a lot of people along that coast, the French and the Monegasque Riviera, but a very approachable guy, nice guy, very knowledgeable, and he does every now and then dip into yachting events, especially those being held there at the Yacht Club, the beautiful, fabulous Yacht Club de Monaco, which doubles during Formula One as the Paddock Club. So it's always a lively occasion, a nice occasion, and they do things up. It's classy there. And I just did a little factoid check. There's His Serene Highness second from the left. And Bernard D'Alessandri there on the left has been the longtime club manager. He's the CEO, really the Commodore. They call Prince Albert the president, as the Italians do, and some French clubs and so on. But look at this factoid, Hamish. The yachting industry revenue in Monaco, $567.1 million turnover in 2022, 3% of the Principality's total turnover. Wow. Is from yachting, the yachting industry. Wow. All those super yachts, all that business, 411 businesses based in the Principality having to do with super yachts, charters, boats, and so on. And there are 1,000 more than, almost 1,500 onshore jobs representing 2.4% of the Monegasque workforce. Did you have any idea that it was that big of an industry anywhere in the world?
It's very impressive, very impressive.
Yes.
I also should say that the Monaco Yacht Club, and the theme of today's presentation, is a very strong supporter of classic yachting. So congratulations to them on the anniversary.
They are. They actually own two classic yachts. They own Twiga, I think is the name of one of them. Do you remember there's two boats, and they're sending kids through there, the youth program. They're putting VIPs on there. They're racing in classic yacht races along the French Riviera. It's a big deal, isn't it?
It is. It's probably the world center of classic yachting at the top end, and I guess it's the dream of any any hardened classic yachter to someday experience classic yachting in Monaco and indeed around the Med.
Indeed. Now, from one classic yachting facility to another, do you recognize, of course, Hamish, this place?
I sure do. Harbour Court.
Harbour Court in Newport, where today their race committee has, in fact, it's over. The starting sequence is now over. It was a 2-hour sequence today, just for the first time ever, in the East Passage, right off Fort Adams. Normally they go outside Castle Hill to start the Newport to Bermuda race, and they started it today in the bay. That is a drone shot, obviously, from just looking east. That's over Fort Adams, that old fort from not quite Revolutionary War days, but guarding the entrance to Newport Harbor. And now it's a public facility. It's a state park, and we've run any number of sailing events there, and there are rock concerts and the jazz festival, yada, yada. That is looking east, almost southeast. On the right end is Harbour Court on the south end of the harbor. Downtown Newport, sort of in the upper left corner, and you can barely see the tip of Goat Island there on the left margin. But that's the view there today. They're running a live television. They did run a live telecast today of the starts, which were from 1400 to 1600 Eastern. So it's almost 1400 here now, so that's 3 hours ago or so. I watched a good bit of it this morning. The Bermuda race is organized by the Bermuda Race Foundation, which is really an amalgamation of New York Yacht Club, but led by the Cruising Yacht Club, the Cruising Club of America, rather, and the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club. It's a 636-mile race, so about the same length as the Fastnet, same length as Sydney Hobart, more or less. And it's biennial, it's every other year, and it's the oldest regularly scheduled ocean race. One of the very few international distance races that is run offshore and not in the within, is that the right word, Julia? Within the sight of land. It's just one. Well, there they say just two of the world's regularly scheduled races held almost entirely out of the sight of land. The second, of course, being
Transpac.
The Transpac from LA to Hawaii. Founded in 1906, the 53rd running, the Bermuda race is scheduled today to start today. And for the first time in the 118-year history, the start will be just offshore, allowing the public viewing at Fort Adams State Park. And they had, as I said, live television. It was good. Good television. Kenny Reed co-hosting it. And casual, informative, really nice stuff. And there, Julia, you know who that is on the Water Reporter?
Just because I saw it, Cole Brower.
There it is. The answers are normally on the slides here, right, Hamish? We try to put the answers on the slides. And she was on the water. They had some technical problems getting connected to her. But there is the drone now, having flown over the east side of the fort, looking now kind of north, almost northerly, but northwest. There's the Newport Bridge in the background, and there, for the first time ever, is the start right off Fort Adams. In the foreground are some race committee boats, and there was a strong incoming tide. So from left to right on that photo, I'd have to do it the obverse way here on this, what am I, croutonic, like that. Running this way, up there in that photo, left to right, the ocean is out to the left, up the bay is to the right or north, and there was a strong incoming tide, which meant they wanted to start and hug this shore. They'd come right into the fort to start. It was a scene. There is the race committee boat. New York Yacht Club's race committee starts the race, and then Royal Bermuda Yacht Club finishes it. And that is a shot of just before the start of the sequence about 3 hours ago. Here is a world exclusive photo from the bow of that race committee boat, thanks to our FOSI and the esteemed Vice Commodore Claire Harrington. Can you pick her out of the crowd there, Julia?
Yes. She's in the middle.
She's got that radio and whatever that is around her neck again, the orange beast she had on. The big gentleman behind her is Forrest Williams. He is the race chair for New York Yacht Club, and he is the PRO. She is the DRO, Deputy Race Officer. But a cool group. And look at the number of women on this race committee, Julia.
Right.
We commented before how impressive that is. And it's a good outfit who are very professional in the competent sense of the word. They're all volunteers. And Claire Harrington sent us that photo just before we went to air, celebrating the superb. Yeah, did you notice the other day we had a picture of the race committee, and they had, remember the color of their pants? They were khaki.
Oh my goodness.
They change the color of their pants every day. This has been a long-standing tradition in New York, going back as long as I've been involved in that
Every
club.
day?
Every day they have a different color: khaki, red. This is Breton red. Sometimes gray. Sometimes white. Right, Hamish?
I didn't know that. I thought it was just all Breton red, but I've learned something.
You got to tune in to Sailing Illustrated to learn these very important factoids.
Now, here's another one that comes from Clark Chapin, and in answer to Steve Gruber. Fort Adams is a former U.S. Army post in Newport, which was established July 4th, 1799.
Good factoid. And that's after the Revolutionary War, but just before the War of 1812. Hamish, you're a military historian, and a historian just generally speaking. What would have been different, do you think, if the U.S. had lost the War of 1812?
I don't think the US would have suddenly become a colony again. I think there would have been a treaty. There would have been possibly a loss of a little bit of territory. Look, essentially, I think it was really a war over rights of nations at sea. I believe it was largely brought about by the British Navy forcibly impressing American sailors onto British Navy vessels. And so I don't think that the outcome would have been dramatic for US independence, in my view. They would have come to an agreement and a treaty as they ultimately did.
Okay, so let me ask you the flip side, because they did ultimately have it. I mean, both sides stood down, right? After your clan, the Brits. I mean, you are a Brit. Okay, I know you're Scottish and yada yada, but basically the Brits burned down the White House, didn't they?
Yeah, well, one of my kinsmen, General Ross, was the man responsible for the troops who set fire to all the federal buildings in the newly built Washington.
It's your fault.
I know.
It's your family's fault, Hamish. What the hell is this?
Yes, the Rosses managed to achieve what Al Qaeda didn't quite finish.
Oh.
Now, the flip side is, what would have happened if the Americans won the war? That question's never really been asked. But counterfactuals are always interesting and make for great debates, and particularly over a beer or a glass of wine. I suspect a chunk of Canada may have gone to the US. I think if it had been a complete rout by the Americans, a chunk of Canada could well have been lost to the US. That's what a lot of people say. It would have been cool if Canada was USA. Da 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 da. Well, that's what's going on today. We digress about 1812 and this fantastic New York Yacht Club Race Committee. It's nice to have a little bit of insight, thanks to Fozy Claire Harrington, the esteemed Vice Commodore, who, if she plays her cards right, Julia, is going to be the first female Commodore.
Yep.
Hamish, you're no longer a member of the Royal Yacht Squadron, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I'm a member of the Royal Akarana Yacht Club, and I've joined a relatively modest trail of people going from one club to the other.
Including?
Some other esteemed people that we both know.
the esteemed counselor, Jim?
I believe he's a member, yes.
You know full well. What did Michael Fay end up doing?
I'm not sure what Michael's done. Michael hasn't been active in sailing for quite some time.
How's his health, by the way?
Look, I'm not up to date with it, but I know he's got his trials and tribulations on the health scene. And, I certainly wish him all the best. He's been an important character in the development and the history of New Zealand sailing, as we both well know. It wasn't for Michael Fay, we would never have got into the America's Cup. We wouldn't have won it. And we wouldn't be currently the holder, in my view.
Yeah, I think that's fair and correct. And, we were at polar opposites during the lead up to in '88 and then the court cases afterwards. But we've become friends ever since. I've been out to Great Mercury Island. Does he still own Great Mercury Island?
Yes, he does with his partner, David Richwhite.
Good. And, we've been regular communicants. He came on the show during that whole S fight over the venue for this current edition of the America's Cup. And it's nice to count him as a friend and see him every now and again. If you see him before or talk to him before please give him our warm regards from the Beach Street Yacht Club.
I will do so.
Back to this race that started a couple hours ago now. The television was terrific. There is the starting line. Claire's over there on the boat on the far side from whence I drew that arrow. And that is the starting line. You can see how crowded it is. They stopped all commercial traffic for the period of the start from, 2 to 4 local time, 6 to 14 to 1600. The other side of that island in the background, that's Connecticut Island, Jamestown, Rhode Island is the town there. And traffic can go up and down in the West Passage and still get up to Providence and so on. But this is the second start. There were a couple boats that started, bigger boats that started in the first start. And it's hotly contested. And where this is taken from, the shoreline is only a few hundred meters from the pin end there, that pin end race committee boat. And they have got to come in here and tack. And the first one out of the start zone really was Pyewacket, the Roy Disney's boat with Peter Iser navigating, our longtime friend. And they seem to be having a good race. And Peter's telling me that, yes, indeed, the Gulf Stream. This race is interesting because not only of wind and current and tactics and so on, but they have to cross the Gulf Stream between the start there up at the top in Newport and the finish down there, 630 plus miles. And atypically, the Gulf Stream, those are current arrows, by the way, not wind arrows, and the current is lined up almost exactly with the rum line. So it could be a fast race, depending upon the wind, and an interesting race to boot. Julia, Hamish, any comments on all that?
Didn't have any idea that the Gulf Stream got up to 4 knots in places. That's I'm always aware of the Gulf Stream, but to see that it gets up to 4 knots plus is pretty impressive.
And of course, that goes all the way across the North Atlantic. It goes over there and warms up Northern Europe, which is why Northern Europe, which is at the latitude of Hudson Bay in Canada, is still in London and so on, relatively warm. The upper coast of Norway is relatively warm. Okay, so much about all that. Let's get to the Olympics now while we've got Hamish here before we get into his superb slideshow. 35 days only to the Olympics. And I'm going to ask you now, this is a correct or crutonic segment because we haven't had one in a while, Julia. Got to have correct or crutonic.
Yeah.
And that is not Jody Shields, by the way. Contrary to rumors that was a young baby Jody, it's not. It's somebody sent that as a modern meme, of course. This week, we featured Olympic uniforms from other countries. Australia's, for example. The French, for example. Now the American uniforms, I'm sure many others are coming out. And these came out today. They're all over the internet, websites, television shows. It's Ralph Lauren again at it. And for the first time, the American team, as you can see there in the photo on the left, is wearing
jeans. Blue jeans.
I knew you'd approve, Julia. Huh? You can tell how pleased she is, Hamish.
But it's the first time that they're American.
And they're not. I mean, what's the word when the jeans are aged a little bit? There's a better word. What's that word, Hamish?
Is it washed?
Yeah, it's stonewashed or something, but there's a better word for that. It's like dry aged, but that's for beef, not for jeans. So watch the comments, Julia. Somebody will know what the hell it is. But I ask you, are these uniforms correct or crutonic? And I'll tell you why they're correct is because they featured our fellow St. Francis Yacht Club member as one of the handful of athletes that was modeling these in New York the other day. Daniela Morose, who's our kiting representative and multiple world champion St. Francis member, and she was part of the team that modeled this. This jacket can be yours, Julia,
Oh, good.
for $299.
Oh,
Although I found today it's already been marked down for 100. Hamish, you want one of those? 100,
I'll pass. Thank you.
129 US. What is that? 140 Kiwi? What's your
Yeah,
dollar?
something like
What's your dollar at to us? 60,
We're about
70?
61 cents, Kiwi cents to the dollar.
61.
Yeah, 61.
I
So
re-
we're just a little bit better than half.
I remember when it was 60, when we were living down there, I mean, we were farting through silk, as my dad would say, because it was like 64 cents on the dollar. So we were being paid, I guess, in those days in American dollars. It was even better if you were paid in euros.
Yeah, you could live like kings back in in the 90s down here. It was the exchange rate was very favorable for people coming in.
Oh, yeah, it was good living when we were there during the Cups in years 2000 and 2003. Hamish, correct or Crutonic?
Ah, it's an acquired taste, shall we say?
Julia, correct or Crutonic?
oh, I like them. They look very sort of American.
Okay, well, I can report that I'm not going to play this whole video, but they were on the biggest morning show here in this country, which is the Today Show. They were on a couple days ago. Have a look at this.
Paris Olympics, they're just 38 short days away, and check this out. Final rehearsals are underway for an opening ceremony.
bye, Hoda.
What happened, Hoda? You hate me that much? You take my phone?
This lady's leaving the set to go over and put a uniform on so she can appear in the segment with the athletes.
Now she crosses camera, perfect timing.
This is the rehearsal we told you about on the scene the other day.
In style as we always do, and apparently Hoda, who's having a quick change, will stretch for a hot second here as we continue to look at the images from Paris. Hoda's getting a little preview, joined by some of our best USA athletes. Hoda.
It's good to see you guys. Wow, we made it. It's good to see you guys. We're so happy. We've got some Olympians and Olympic hopefuls, and of course we have David Lauren. Ralph Lauren's been in charge of outfits for so many years. Tell us about the inspiration. These are the opening and closing ceremony outfits.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
You look fantastic. We're so proud to dress our team. These are really American ambassadors, and they're going to walk on the biggest global stage that's ever been. And we wanted to do something that was modern, but distinctively American
Cool.
and very Ralph Lauren.
Okay, so we got opening ceremony, we got closing ceremony, and we got
Village gear.
village gear.
Village
I love
gear
it.
for
Let's
the
start
village
off with
people.
Danielle Moroz, kiteboarding. Congratulations.
Thank
you are
you.
the first
Even
person,
Hamish is
I think, in the United States to compete in this particular event in the Olympics. Tell me how you're feeling.
Oh my gosh, it's just so exciting, and I'm so excited to share the sport that I'm so passionate about and love so much with the rest of the world. So I hope everyone really enjoys watching it. I know I'm gonna have a lot of fun out there.
We
So
can't wait to see you. That's a great opening ceremony
Thank
here.
you.
We can't wait. Jamal, you're rocking the closing ceremony jacket. You're going to be competing in the Paralympics, and the trials are still coming up at the end of the month.
Yes, ma'am.
You won bronze in Tokyo.
Okay,
How are you feeling about
gag me with a spoon. I can't take any more of that. Okay, but you get the idea. Julia, one last go. Correct or Crutonic?
Better than a couple of the other ones before.
Yeah, until you feel the material. I mean, you really want to feel the material and see what it feels like. I still have pants from the Irish Olympic teams at 1984. They're training pants, warm-up pants, and they're fine. They've held up well. Hamish, correct or Crutonic?
Oh, I kind of like the blazer. The blazer looks pretty cool. It's kind of classical.
Did we decide from the Fosey tell us what that term of art is for when you faded, weathered, distressed? There it is. Thank you.
Distressed.
Morris Stevens, Baton Rouge, distressed.
Yes.
The distressed look.
Yes.
Chris actually says they're Crutonic. I don't know if that's a typo or not. Baton Rouge thinks the jeans is a good look.
Do you have an announcement for us?
So,
I do. I'm super excited to officially announce that I've made the 2024 Olympic team.
okay, I thought maybe it was coming out or something. I didn't know. Okay, enough of all this. That's the idea. One other thing I really think is Crutonic, and there's no doubt about this in my mind and probably in a lot of your minds. This is the non-sailing CEO who's got to go. I've worked him into the show since it's Friday night in Europe, and it's early Saturday morning down under. You all can now have a drink. That's the drinking. Cheers, drink. There it is, actually, and the rest of them. Jeans are working attire. Yeah, Graham Sweeney, I'm with you. I really think that having a nice uniform like the French uniform or the Australian uniform if the village people's uniforms, do that YMCA again, Hamish. Do that. You did that. I missed it. I didn't cut to you until YMC. If it was for the village attire, not for the grand entrance, for the opening ceremony attire, I'd feel up. But because I wear jeans, right, Julia? I wear jeans all the time I'm wearing jeans right now with a blazer. You can't really tell because they're nice jeans and they're not faded. They're not distressed. But I wear, Levi's with blazer over to the club, and a lot of people do. And it's, with topsiders, it's an okay look.
Yep.
As long as you don't have holes in the knees.
Oh, but that's if you're going to be fashionable.
We're canceling the non-sailing CEO, by the way. Hamish, do you wear jeans with holes in the knees?
No. Samantha wouldn't allow me to wear jeans that are even overly faded, let alone holes.
Good for her.
How about your kids?
Actually, my kids tend to wear chinos more than jeans, to be honest.
Good for them. Well, chinos are back in, right?
Yeah, I think that generation seems to have worked themselves out of jeans a little bit. I can't remember the last time I both saw them wearing jeans, to be honest.
Well, that's bad for us here in the home of Levi's.
I guess they're the mark of the boomers, I guess.
Maybe so. Well, speaking of boomers, well, he's not really a boomer, but let's go to John Emmett, go to his report while we're on the Olympics, the coaching corner. His report today is very brief because he then was in a rush to get to the hospital for an MRI on his wrist.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. So it's really nice to be back here at the Weymouth and Portland National Sailing Academy. And I was going to talk a little bit about the importance of analysis, because that's something which is very much part of being a coach. And that's why I'm going to go and have the MRI on my wrist, so I know exactly what's going on, because this diagnosis is much better than just guessing. Which brings me on to John Emmett's Coaching Corner. And one of the really key ideas is that the sailing skill set is all the same. In fact, you can learn a lot from sailing different boats. And that means whether you're sailing a keel boat, a planing dinghy, a foiling boat, the fundamental skills are all the same. And actually a change can be good as a rest. So today I'm going to go out for my first sail in a D0, and I'm going to let you know what I think next week.
I told you it was short.
Yes.
Sail fast, sail safe, and have fun however you're getting on the water.
You see where he is?
Yeah, the horse pistol.
He's in the horse pistol. And then I managed to find this photo of him. He posted to Facebook literally just before we went to air. So he's in there getting his wrist MRI finally. Hamish, how's your National Health Service down there? Are you able to get quick service? If you need to get an MRI, do you have to wait for months or weeks, or can you get one in the next days? Uh-oh. Where's Hamish?
They're under pressure like all health systems. But if you've got a critical case and it's urgent, then yes, you can get access reasonably smartly. But if you've got a non-urgent case, there are waiting lists, and it can take some time. We do have a public system, quite a strong public system, but also that's aided by a private system as well, where people with health insurance can sometimes jump the queue.
You notice we've got during that movie, that quick video with Emmett, I got the AV sync perfect now with Hamish. You're perfectly in sync, Hamish.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Huh?
That's what I aim for my whole life.
To be perfectly in sync with Sailing Illustrated, especially. Yeah. I'm sure that's your major life goal right now. So I have a quick story. As you know, when I was bouncing around down there with Oracle Team USA or whatever we were called then, suddenly my left arm went numb. I'm out on the rubber boat all day, every day in your bloody, bumpy Hauraki Gulf. My left arm goes numb, a hand is croutonnic. So the team doctor sends me over to the Auckland, I guess it's called Auckland Hospital, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I go to the Auckland Hospital, and they say, well, we'll do an MRI. There was no I was wheeled in, walked in, put on the the gurney and wheeled into the MRI, and they MRI'd my neck and said, "Oh, you got a big problem here." And they came out. Here you got to wait for the radiologist to come out and look at the thing. And the guy was right there when I came out. It was a Saturday even, or a Sunday. Maybe that's why it was so slow. And he said, "Oh yeah, Mr. Eamon, you got C3, C4, you got a C2 involvement, and that disc is impinging on the nerve going down your arm, and we can operate." You can operate. Yeah, like work on my neck. He said, "Yeah, we go in through here for that." Well, which is that's not atypical. That's kind of the normal way in to do neck discs, or so I've since learned. And I said, "Well, how many of these have you done?" And he said, "Well, we've done a handful of them." I said, "Okay, give me 2 aspirin. I'll call you in the morning, and I'll go back to Germany." I think we were living in Germany then. And because, these things, especially with bulging discs, as we all know, they tend to go away after a lot of them do, not all of them. So we're wishing John Emmett success with his wrist. We hope his wrist goes away. We hope they're not going to operate at least right away. But I must say, I thought I had great service until they said, "Well, we will operate."
It sounds like you must have been on a private system. I'm sure as tourists you had health insurance and you got through the private system. I can't imagine you would have got that quicker service out of the public health system.
Well, this was, of course, now a number of years ago. It's almost 5 years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the deal with Emmett. And John Emmett, get to the front of the fleet. His short report for today. We wish him well with his MRI. And, bloody hell, he's getting old, Julia.
Oh, no, he's
getting old. He's having all sorts of health complaints now.
He's a beer babe.
Before we get to Hamish's slides, and it is a fantastic slideshow, let's, about Classic Yachting. This weekend in New York, for the first time in, 4 years, 4+ years, is the Mubadala. I've been practicing Mubadala, New York Sail Grand Prix, and they're getting a lot of media attention. They'd have a lot more spectators, I think, if they were out in Newport. But Russell is trying to build this up. And today is the press conference. Tomorrow is racing at 4:30 Eastern, so 1:30 our time. The Mubadala. And this Mubadala is a big financial services company, and I think they're based in the Middle East. I'm not sure, but they're sponsoring now any number of these events. And today it was announced at the press conference that they're going to sponsor a new team. This is this morning at the New York Sail GP presser that at least Stingray and I were watching, perhaps others of you were as well, where they announced that Brazil next year, they didn't announce an event, but they announced a Brazilian sponsored, owned Sail GP team. Alan Adler, who is either the famously good star sailor or the son of the famously good star sailor, I think he's the son, longtime Brazilian sailing family, regardless, Adlers. And apparently he is a big deal down there and is going to end up owning this team with the support of Mubadala in Brazil. So that was the big announcement this morning, and they put out this video.
Mark number 1, high speeds across the board. Nerves of steel as they approach mark number 1. The battle is on.
Okay, so none of this is obviously shot in Brazil. And this quick cutting, MTV-esque cutting, drives a lot of us crazy. But that's what the kids like. I don't know if the Brazilians like it, but I'll bet you there's an event down there sooner than later. This guy Adler, who owns the team, is also the CEO of the Formula One event in Sao Paulo. So he's got a big sports management marketing outfit and will be the Mubadala Brazilian Sail GP team, which begs the question, which team goes away? Because there are only X many boats and there are Y many teams, or X+1 teams, and one of the league-owned teams, like Canada or Australia or one or two of the others, the Spanish, I guess, if they don't get an owner and some sponsorship, then they may end up being on the cutting block. So the press conference today, I don't know if this is contrived controversy or not, but this USA-Canadian rivalry, and of course Phil Robertson on the right is a Kiwi. Taylor Canfield is the new helm, the new driver for the U.S. team, and they, of course, had 3 10th places at the last event on Saturday and broke, then didn't sail on Sunday. So I'll play some, but the press briefing today was all about this. The press releases afterwards were all about this. And you've got to walk the walk, Robertson said. He challenging Canfield to perform this weekend in New York. Now look at the S-eating grins both these guys have. And I just can't help, Hamish, but think this is a Russell Coutts.
Contrived.
What's the word I want? Well, contrived controversy. What saith you, Hamish?
Look, I can't comment on what they decide to do at the press conferences, but I've got to say my son Angus Ross will be there. He flew in from London to New York to spend some time in New York and to watch this event. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him his experiences there.
Did he fly in specifically because of SailGP, or did he just time it so that he could watch SailGP?
No, I think he came in to watch SailGP. Obviously, he'll do other things while he's in New York for the weekend. He must have got some cheap flights, being a good Scotsman.
Now, is Angus the one I taught how to play the bass guitar, or is that the
that's
other?
Ferguson. He's about to join his brother in London from Melbourne, Australia, fairly shortly.
And is it true they're both lawyers?
Yes, they are.
Like father, like son?
Yeah.
Yes, I clearly didn't beat them hard enough when they were growing up.
Are they going to get a doctorate? You're the only lawyer, one of the few lawyers we know who's also got a doctorate.
Well, it's over to them. My youngest son, Fergus, has a first-class master's degree, so he's well placed to go and do a doctorate one day.
Okay, well, give them our regards. Give them my regards. We had a lot of happy times. Your family, our family. As I mentioned, the Niccolo Porzio, whatever his last name is, his extended family name. But back to this thing in New York, the press conference today. Phil, again, he's smiling through the whole thing, and he said, this is the press release. Canada driver Phil Robertson challenged Taylor Canfield's United States to walk the walk in New York when the team's rivalry reignited ahead of racing. There were some social media memes that went back and forth, and then they badmouthed each other on that. What's the name of that? Drive to Succeed, or Sail to Succeed? Whatever the sail.
Drive to Survive, the Formula One.
Formula One is Drive to Survive, and this is Sail to Succeed. Is that it? What's the name? Somebody in the comments will know what this thing is called.
Yeah.
J. Frederick Bland thinks that SailGP is taking lessons from WWE, the MMA spectacle. In order for there to be a rivalry, both teams need to be relevant. Good point, Clayton Embley.
Yeah, yes.
Jody Shields has got it. Jody, of course, has done some great commentary for them. Racing on the Edge. Phil is funny and witty, Stingray thinks. Drive to make sponsor dollars, that's what he says.
Oh, sales reveal.
Well, that's what Chris says it should be called. So this is the pre-event press conference saw both drivers trade jibes after SailGP's behind-the-scenes docu-series, Racing on the Edge, captured Robertson and Canfield calling each other, "Oh, arrogant. You're so arrogant." Well, give me a effing break. I mean, really. Here's Phil. I think this is Phil.
There's no secret. It's a tough league. It's competitive, but at some point, you've got to walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Taylor, I was about to go.
Well, welcome, Brazil. Sorry, Canada, you might be out. But yeah, no comment. Don't really have any time for what Phil wants to do with his life and his supposed new nation of Canada.
Okay, so there's clearly no love lost between the two of you. It's nice that you're sitting together this.
So both with a big full grin.
Yep.
Both Taylor and of course Phil. Now Taylor is going to go on. I'm going to show you another clip where Taylor says it's great to have an all-American team here on the water, notwithstanding that one of their team members is an Australian,
yes,
Jeremy Wilmot. But I digress. So this is a nice shot from the training I think that's yesterday, and they're racing off Governor's Island, which is just across there from the Statue of Liberty, on Liberty Island. Responding, Canfield said on-water improvements would, quote, take time. I think everyone has alluded to how difficult these boats are to sail and how tricky the conditions were in Halifax. We're making mistakes, and we're looking to improve those mistakes as quickly as possible, but it's going to take time. He added he was confident the team will be fighting for the top in Season 5, and here's Taylor at this morning's presser.
What was the problem?
Yeah, I think everyone's alluded to how difficult these boats are to sail and how just tricky the conditions were in Halifax. And we have a very new growing team and an incredible group of talent, and great to have all Americans on the boat. But it's going to take time, and we've acknowledged that. And starting off in those conditions with a new wing trimmer, a pretty vital role on the boat, was super challenging. He hopped in, Jeremy Wilmot, and did an incredible job. And we were in a couple of races, and we're making the mistakes, and we're looking to improve those mistakes as quick as possible, and just up the level of consistency. But yeah, that's going to take time, and I'm sure that this group will get to be fighting for the top.
I think you could hear the guffaws in the back of the hall when he said, hey, we're all American team. And then goes on to talk about Jeremy Wilmot.
Yes. From
the famous Wilmot. You know the Wilmots in Australia, right? Hamo?
Yes, indeed.
The Wilmot family. Bobby Wilmot, who, as I've told the story before, Bobby, and Huey Trahan's married to one of the Wilmot sisters, I think. I can't remember how it all works out. But Bobby Wilmot came up to Newport to watch some of the Americans go way back in '83, and he was doing an Olympic campaign. He was the Australian, I think, first windsurfer type, I think, and then he went to the '84 games. I can't remember, but he good sailor, hell of that whole family, Jeremy, Bobby, that whole clan. And Bobby cut a wide swath through Newport. My wife was in love with him, too.
Oh, good.
All he had to do was put his little red Speedo on and walk around in our apartment in his red Speedo. And Hamish, I'm telling you what, Leslie was smitten by the Wilmot family. Okay, so there's Taylor, and not to be outdone on your favorite network, Julia.
Yes.
MSNBC. This morning, Mike Buckley, and you know who that is on the left? That's you know who that is, Hamish? She's a co-owner of the American team now. They brought her in because she's very articulate, very bright, to say nothing of beautiful. That's Lindsey Vonn, the famous American ski racer, former Olympian, and she wrecked her knees finally, and I think is retired. But she's a co-owner of the team, she really very good. And she was on MSNBC this morning with Mike Buckley, who's the ostensible CEO of the team. And okay, I'm not going to play the clip, but it was entertaining. Now, Sir Ben has resurfaced in Sail GP, commenting on his team, which has now won a regatta, as you know, Hamish. And Sir Ben is back at it with this video.
I'm most impressed this season by the Spanish team. I think they've really come to the fore. They've stepped up. There's been a few comments from some of the more experienced sailors in the fleet, maybe that perhaps some of the youngsters haven't been stepping up. And I think they really responded to that well. I'm impressed with how they sail. They're aggressive, they push hard, but also to see their energy. When you see them on the dock walking around, they've got a smile on their face, they're loving being part of Sail GP, and they love being out in the water, and they seem like a really strong team unit, so I'm really impressed by them. I think we're seeing the boats getting pushed harder and harder, and you'd expect that with this level of competition and the quality of the sailors involved. I think there's been some issues, either user error, or in the case of the Australians, they've been a little bit unlucky with the setup of their boat on a few occasions. And that is part of the challenge with such a tight circuit and these boats really being pushed to the limit. You're going to find that, and the trick is making sure you're in that top three for the grand final. Looks at the moment like the Aussies, the Kiwis and the Spanish are doing the best job at that, but I'd say there's still plenty can happen in these final 2 events, and really the teams have got to do a good job at mitigating the setbacks that they find, be that sort of self-inflicted or otherwise. I think teams like Germany, I think our team as well, we've seen that in Halifax, relatively new to the league, or certainly in terms of some of the sailors on board being relatively new to the league, and just taking a bit of time to get to grips with it. But they've got the talent and they're learning fast and pushing hard, and the great thing we know about the league is that it's all there in terms of data analysis and coaching support and so on. So if you've got the talent and you've got the determination, you can make it all the way. It kind of feels like the Aussies are, I don't know, say struggling is a bit harsh, but they would be the first to admit that they would like to have won more events. They've had a few setbacks with the kit, which I'm sure most of that it's out of their control, and they've got to do a good job of just regrouping. We know that they've got the talent and the capability to win in SailGP. Kiwis have really stepped up this season in particular, pushing hard. I think impressive with how they sail the boat at times. And then a young team like the Spanish coming through and really, the Bulls charging hard. So I think it's fascinating.
Nice ink from Sir Ben. No question, that's good. It's nice. Here are the standings going into the penultimate regatta this weekend in New York. And then in due course, they're out here, middle of July, they're out here in San Francisco for the big enchilada. Hamish, your team, led by Peter Burling, is leading on top with 91 points. Spain in second, to everyone's surprise. Diego Botín in second on 81 points. Tommy Slingsby, who is the toast of the New York Yacht Club these days, is also the skipper of their America's Cup team. The helmsman skipper. I'm not sure if Terry Hutchinson has the title skipper. And another surprise, Rockwool, Denmark, Nikolai Sehested in fourth, and Quentin, is that how you pronounce that in French, you guys? Quentin, I would say, Delapierre, Quentin Delapierre on 68 points, and then the rest are really not in the hunt, just notwithstanding the Emirates GBR's recent success. So, Hamish, should I start with Julia?
I'd like to make a couple of comments. I'm surprised that people who are involved in the America's Cup are still seemingly heavily involved in Sail GP. I would have thought this close out from the America's Cup that they would be focusing their efforts more on the America's Cup. But Peter Burling, their boat's still on the water in transit, I believe, or being set up. So I can understand his participation. But Ben's still floating around Sail GP. I find that a little bit surprising, considering their work they have in front of them.
I'm not sure Ben was there. I mean, they could have shot that anywhere. Could have shot it in Europe, I suppose. But Ben looks very thin. He looks very fit, almost gaunt. Didn't you think?
No.
The other observation I'd make that there are more sailors on a Sail GP boat than there are on the America's Cup. If you take away the cyclists, that is.
Yeah.
You take away the cyclists, and there are 4 sailors on the boat.
Yep.
Yep.
And so many people think that is just utterly crotonic. We're going to get to that question in a moment too, Hamish. I couldn't let that question go by here. No. Julia, sir, who's going to win this season in Sail GP? Remember, it all comes down to that one winner-take-all race for $2 million here in San Francisco. But who are going to be the final 3 teams at the end of the San Francisco regatta? We got 2 to go, New York and then San Francisco.
Well, who knows? But I'm impressed with Spain's progress.
Indeed.
And they'll be in home waters again. And so I wouldn't...
Home waters?
Well, they aren't.
You mean that the Americans... I don't know what home waters is, Julia, because all these people from different countries.
Yeah, that's true.
But, Tommy Slingsby, you can't really call San Francisco home waters for anybody in this crowd, probably.
Yeah.
But who's your pick to win overall? Come on, Julia.
I'm gonna say, just for fun, Spain.
Really? Hamish? Who's going to win overall?
Well, I think Peter's got a good lead there, but I certainly wouldn't count out the Aussies, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think Tommy has, but he's done it 4 years in a row, or 3 years in a row, and this would be his 4th.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be. Let's ask the Fozy what they think, who they, in the comments, Julia, who they think are going to win overall, because we are getting now down to the short.
Slingsby.
That's Alistair. Alistair, Mr. President, Murray cheering for Tommy Slingsby. John Emmett agrees with you. He says NZL. He agrees with you, Hamish. Julie Aarons, I'm hoping it's the Kiwis. What's she saying?
But never forget Slingsby. He's incredible.
She's got a big soft spot in her heart for him.
Yes.
She waxed on about him on Facebook the other day.
Yeah.
Julie Aarons did. Mm-hmm. I think the only person she likes more is Grant Dalton.
Yes. Well, she does.
John Emmett is, are you saying the ex-Finn sailors are no longer sailors? No, I don't think any of us, including and especially Hamish, is saying that. How much are Sail GP sailors paid? Hamish, do you want to venture a guess at that? Ed Worley's asking that question.
Look, I would be purely speculating. I have no idea whatsoever, but my guess is the teams aren't hugely financial. 150.
Yeah, I mean, to a lot of people, that will be a lot of money. And even 10 years ago in our sport, outside the America's Cup teams, unless you were a Brad Butterworth who could jump from maxi boat to maxi boat and make several $1,000s a weekend, $150 of steady. And the key, here's the key, as you well know, Hamish, as you well know, Julia, as a former headhunter, steady income is a big difference from never being sure if you're going to get hired to go to the next professional regatta.
Right.
And how much you're going to get paid. And you got to, well, my day rate's $1,000. And if you can work 150 days a year, that's real money. But that's a lot of working days in the year.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you're right, Hamish. I think it's probably mid six figures for the top people. I think there's some other people who are barely being paid in Sail GP. Same as on big boats elsewhere.
James Frederick Bryan says 1 to 150K a year.
Yeah, he agrees with what we're saying here, I think. Okay, well, I think Tom is snake bit. As much as I am a big fan of his, I know him probably the best of this whole group from having done a campaign or two. I know Taylor Canfield pretty well, but not as well as I know Tom. I don't know Pete Burling very well, but as much as I know and like Tom, I agree. I think it's the Kiwis' year. I think Pete Burling is going to end up winning this, and maybe, Julia, you're right. Maybe the Spanish will come through, but we shall see. It'll be fun to watch. 2 regattas left, and we will tune in tomorrow. There's day 1 live racing tomorrow at 13:30 Pacific, 16:30 Eastern, and 20:30 CET, which of course is your Sunday morning down under, what, Hamish, that'll be -5 for you, so that'll be 06:30 your time tomorrow morning, and then 06:30 your time Monday morning, and a couple hours earlier than that in Sydney. Is that right? Did I calculate that correctly?
That's about right.
Okay, so much for that. I think it's time to get to Dr. Hamish Ross's slides, but before we do that, let's just see if there's any other comments here. Julie Aarons, Grant is my friend, so my feelings are never in doubt, but Slingsby is an incredible sailor, but I like Nathan Outeridge also.
Right.
Any other comments here? What's Clark saying? As Hugh Keel used to say,
the race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but it is the way to bet.
Hamish, I wonder one more question before we go to your slides. Well, we're an hour and 11 minutes into the show, so we need to get cracking here. But we now know, and we didn't put this in the slides, but we now know that the Auckland and Christchurch regattas for Sail GP have been canceled. Russell's pulled back after the problem in Christchurch. And the Auckland regatta was supposed to be this year, and they moved it back to Christchurch, and then they had the whole porpoise problem, or what was that, dolphins? What are those? What's the protected species down there in Christchurch? Is it Wellington? It's Christchurch.
They're known as a Maui dolphin, essentially, and they are quite a rare dolphin. They're becoming rarer. There's a lot of controversy. They've been getting caught in fishing nets and by fishing trawlers and things. And so I can understand the sort of concerns that
basking sharks
people have
Yeah.
over protecting those dolphins because they are becoming a little rarer than they used to be. At the same time, I can understand Russell's enormous frustration over the shutting down of the harbour for this regatta when other harbour users don't have any restrictions whatsoever. And indeed, you could take a Sail GP boat out there tomorrow and sail up and down the harbour to your heart's content without any rules and regulations. So I do feel that they didn't get the balance right in Christchurch. I can understand how Russell and his team got incredibly frustrated there and ultimately pulled the plug. But I guess Christchurch's loss is hopefully Auckland's gain. Hopefully it comes back to Auckland. We don't have the same problem. Yes, we get dolphins and wildlife in our sea like any other bit of water, but frankly, it's not a major issue, and I believe it will be very well received here in Auckland. Right now, we're in the depths of a pretty severe recession in Auckland. And a lot of people are saying that, wouldn't it have been great to have the America's Cup here with 6 teams and all their families and tourists and things? It would have made quite a transformative difference to the economic landscape of Auckland and New Zealand right now. And
exactly.
People are still pretty bitter about it, to be honest.
We were talking about that the other day, you and I, about how nice it would be to be down there for the Cup. I mean, it's easy for us because it's a long flight, 12 hours, but it's all north-south or practically north-south. So it really is a lot easier on the BOD than going to Europe, which is only a 9-hour flight or so, maybe a little more than that, depending, downwind, upwind. And the basking shark thing, Julia, was in New York. That was in Newport. We didn't have basking sharks down there, did we? I think it was the basking sharks where we saw were at the TP50, the 52 Super Series in Newport last weekend. Hamish, so you don't think Sail GP is going back?
Not to Christchurch. They've pulled the plug on Christchurch, and I think it would take a lot of water under the bridge before they went back to Christchurch, particularly under the current regime. My belief is that Auckland will be an ideal position. I know that Auckland was switched to Christchurch because Auckland City couldn't get its act together, which was very disappointing for the locals. And hopefully they've learnt their lesson, and they can make it happen in New Zealand.
What is Stingray? Hector's dolphins are cool. I'm curious if Hamish is also a fan of fruit bats. You know what that's about? They call it the fruit boat. The ship must have arrived, hasn't it, in Tarragona? Let's be serious here for a minute. Tell us, Dogzilla Monster, that's Stingray up in Seattle. Hamish, did you ever meet Stingray? You know who he is, the denizen of the Sailing Anarchy forums?
Yeah, look, we've traded messages many a time, and I look forward to the day when I can share a beer with him, because I think we're on the same page about 99% of the time.
Well, he must be in a witness protection program or something because he really doesn't want to be outed. Yes. And I know who he is. I've been to his home. He drove me up when we were building the trimaran up in Anacortes, up in northwestern Washington. He picked me up at the airport. We stopped off and had a beverage, an adult beverage at his home, and then he drove me up to Anacortes. He was the first non-team member to go inside the shed and actually see the boat before we splashed it, which caused your Kiwi Mark Turner some angst. What are you doing, Tom, bringing that Sailing Anarchy guy in here? Tugboat, relax. That guy has been such a big help, and he was. To us, and we'll let him in. But Hamish, I keep telling him you're kind of a not that cool a guy, but he really thinks highly of you, despite my trying to tell him otherwise.
Well, that was the 1% I was talking about before.
John Emmett thinks Barcelona will be great. J. Frederick Bland, maybe he signed off, maybe Stingray signed off on some of those Boeing planes, and that's why he's in the witness protection. Maybe because, he was a coder. He worked at Boeing. He didn't design the planes, but he was designing their computer codes and making a lot of money from what I gather. But maybe he's a whistleblower. Stingray, tell us, are you a whistleblower?
Not going to tell it.
Okay, Hamish, let's go to your slides. We've got your Classic Yachting New Zealand. Is this virtually the same presentation you gave at Helsinki a couple, months ago?
Yes, I was invited by one of your fosies, John Lammertz van Buren, who runs a timber business, a specialist timber business that's got cutting rights in Alaska. And he supplies a lot of the masts for classic yachts, and masts and booms and other rigging. And he's a longtime friend of mine. And he invited me up to what's called the Classic Yacht Forum up in Helsinki. They run it every year. It's a fantastic event, and the hosts are very generous, and it was a great time. And I was asked to do a couple of presentations. One was on classic yachting in New Zealand, which has its unique characteristics, as well as something on the America's Cup, controversies, how that has shaped the competition over the life of the America's Cup. So today I've decided to just quickly run through a few of the slides. And what I would like to say at the outset, that many of these pictures, indeed most of the pictures, have been supplied by Roger Mills of Hummingbird, a local photographer here who has a particular interest in our classic yacht fleet and takes marvellous pictures. And as you can see from the cover slide there, that's one of his more artistic photographs that he's used some technology on. And I decided to make that the cover slide.
Okay, shall we go? The opening slide is a video, a 2-minute video, and I think that also is a Roger Mills video, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yeah, look, show the video. I think it gives you a bit of a flavour.
Let's go to it. Well, it's running, sort of. There we go. The timer was running, not the video. Hamish, do you want to voice over any of this?
Yeah, most of this has been taken up at Maharangi, which is one of our classic yacht weekends. We have recently a Wooden Boat Festival in Auckland. This was the one that held a few months ago here in Auckland. And toward the end of our summer, it's going to become an annual event. And indeed, it will be biannually. We'll have this is the Maharangi Regatta race. Our yacht Rainbow.
That A7 is yours?
Yes, it is. And the boat behind it, you can see close to the camera now, is a boat called Rafiti, and one of our competitors. Most of these boats are now over 100 years old. That's a boat called Waitangi, built in the early 1890s. I can reel off a number of these yachts. That looks like Prize. There we go, Rafiti again. And there we go, a boat called Araki, who was the queen of the harbour for many decades before Ranger came along.
Gorgeous.
Mm.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's you can take a lot of these pictures, put them in sepia, and they look like they've been taken in the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Mm.
That's your boat again?
Yes, we must have been
Rainbow.
on a passion race there with the inflatable on the deck.
Yeah, when you see Roger, give him buy him a beer for me, because I've used a lot of his stuff. We've talked, we've texted. We have talked actually, but I've never met him in person. David James wants to know who makes the sails.
We have a number of sail makers. I use one of our crew members who has a loft up in Whangarei, Caliber Sails. A guy known as Dave Parr, known as Waldo. He makes our sails. I know that Norths makes some sails for some of the yachts around here. So there is a diverse collection of sail makers who can still make sails for old boats like this. And it is not easy. You need to have some experience and skills, particularly with old gaff rigs. And these days there's not too much of a call for making new topsails, but we certainly have a good collection of craftsmen here that can keep us fast and in sailing.
Maura Stevens, true sailing majesty.
Absolutely.
I can smell the tung oil. Hamish, what is tung oil? T-U-N-G, or did he misspell that?
Look, it's something you use to for the bright work, and people use different types of products for, it's just traditional varnish to other Seekins products for some of the bright work. There's a range of product, and every boat owner seems to have a different opinion as to which is the best product.
Okay, well, let's get into these slides. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. Maybe we dash through these slides and then go back to the questions.
What I tried to do here is just explain to the people at the conference from Scandinavia where New Zealand was, and that's just marking where the polar opposite of Helsinki compared to New Zealand. So we were, in fact, their polar neighbours. And here I just wanted to give some idea of New Zealand's size compared to Europe. And, that might be an interesting slide for many people just to gather both an idea of our...
I had no idea how relatively large. That made New Zealand seem larger to me than I realized it was when you superimposed it on Europe like that. Julia, what do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. It was interesting.
And look, here, when I was talking about the history of New Zealand sailing, it was important really to recognize the early Polynesian settlers and sailors who arrived from East Polynesia to New Zealand in around about sort of the 1300s. They sailed, they had no metallurgy. Everything was made using wood and natural products. And they sailed these many thousands of miles to settle the islands of the Pacific. And it's truly a remarkable feat. And there were return voyages. That's being archaeologically proved that there were voyages between New Zealand and the islands, although they believe change in climate around about the 1500s seemed to have shut down contact with Polynesia again, isolating New Zealand, and there the classic Maori culture then developed. But they are very closely related, in fact, closely genetically related to the Polynesians of Tahiti. European settlement came along. The first European to set eyes in New Zealand were a Dutch East India Company. The captain was Abel Tasman. He gave the country its name, New Zealand. And it was some nearly 150 years or so later that Cook, the famous British navigator, came to New Zealand and mapped it, circumnavigated it before going on to Australia and mapping the Australian east coast. There were also a French explorer here at exactly the same time as Cook, although their visit was fairly brief. After Cook returned and the opportunities for whalers, sealers, and other traders took off after about the 1790s. But it wasn't really until missionaries came along in 1840 that there was any great deal of colonization, and it was only really a French-British rivalry that caused the British to finally take possession and control of New Zealand in the 1840s.
Hamish, did the Maori, back on your earlier point, the Maori preceded the Polynesians, right? The Polynesians showed up?
No, the Maori were the Polynesians.
They were?
Yes. Essentially, like any population that's just separated from its parent, tends to develop culturally and whilst there are many similarities with their cousins in Polynesia, they are a distinct culture in themselves.
Okay, that was a question from Stingray.
Yeah, so what tended to happen going back to that era is that when they arrived in New Zealand in the 1250s, 1350s or thereabouts, no human had set foot there. So the protein in the form of bird life was just spectacular. So the fishing and protein, so they had a population explosion because there was so much readily available food. Once those supplies started to dwindle, that they became fairly much more tribal and warlike as competition for those scarce resources hit up, if you like. And there was a lot of intertribal fighting and battles that took place, particularly during the 1600s right way through until early European settlement.
Okay. This is the shot I grabbed as your cover shot. Tell us.
That's a great shot. I mean, that's about half of our large classic gaff rig fleet. We all love that picture because it really does show what it's like for us to be racing vessels that, I mean, just in terms of the ages of the vessels, we have on the left here, we have Rainbow 1898. We have what looks like Araki A3 look, I might be wrong here, about 1903, 1904. And then we have Rafferty a couple of years later. And then what appears to be Waitangi, I just can't quite see from that, possibly, and she's early 1890s. So, there you've got, nearly 500 years of sailing vessels in total of age. And that's something, I have a little mission for myself is before I finally hang up my sailing boots to go sailing in all the yachts in New Zealand, all the old classic yachts, and do 1,000 years of sailing in one season.
That'd be great.
1,000 years of sailing in one season.
So sailing really started off in New Zealand. I mean, it was a fairly rugged country. Sailing was the only way to get round quickly. And there were lots of local colonial regattas. And as you can see here, there were Maori canoe racing as well as European whaler racing and other vessels. And that slowly developed with a lot of gambling that took place, as you can imagine, and people started to build purpose-built race boats, and that kicked off a strong local industry, not only of commercial sailboats, but also specific race yachts as well. And they largely relied on British designs. They received magazines and articles from the UK, but also from the US, and they were influenced by local designs. And yachting, really, the classic period of New Zealand yachting really kicked off in the 1880s through to the First World War. And after that time, the centreboard classes got a lot of attention between the wars. And then after the servicemen returned home from the Second World War, there was a lot of home building. A lot of people were determined to get out in the water and enjoy the benefits of sailing. And that's where sailing really took off. In terms of Olympics, New Zealand's first attendance at a sailing Olympics was in Melbourne in 1956, where we won a gold in the Sharpie class. And New Zealand's been a strong participant ever since.
This meter boat?
Yeah, that's a 12-meter boat. A 6-meter boat. We never really got into the meter classes, partly because before the international rule came out, there'd been a profusion of changes of rules in British sailing, which ultimately ended up confusing we poor people out in the colonies. And by the time the meter rule came in, we'd had a gutsful and nobody could be bothered building a meter boat. And so we didn't really have class yacht racing in the way that they did as once the meter rule came into play. That's possibly a function of numbers. So we did build 2 6-meter yachts. This is the only surviving one in measurement, and indeed the owner of Scout here took it to Europe and Scandinavia to race in relatively recent times, but I think it's one of the world's oldest meter yachts from really the birth of the international rule.
Yeah, which was what, 06, I guess.
Yeah, 06, 07, so that tends to be it. And then we had a period during particularly the 1890s of intense competition between 2 families of yacht designers, the Logan family and the Bailey family. The Logans were Scots. They came from Glasgow. They had worked in shipyards in Glasgow. So father and sons, when the sons grew up, they opened their own business as Logan Brothers. And every season, these 2 yards used to launch their latest rater yacht. And certainly the 2.5 and 5 raters were the strongest classes. And they tended to be very, very competitive. They had quite a strong trade with Australia, so they built yachts in Australia. And indeed, many of those yachts that were sent to Australia still survive in Australia. And we at the Classic Yacht Association have encouraged people to to buy these somewhat derelict yachts in Australia and bring them back and restore them in New Zealand.
But you say that the fleet is largely intact after all these years.
Yes, it is. And that's largely for a number of reasons. First of all, the timber that's used, it's kauri timber, otherwise known as Agathis australis. These are very old, slow-growing timber, beautifully straight timber. It's, for some reason, it seems to have a resin in it that reacts really well with salt water, and it just seems to survive. I mean, this is Rainbow. You can see the stern of Rainbow here. When we restored her in around about 2006, 2007, really the hull was all in perfect condition. We took the garbutt off. That's the plank just above the keel. And these are triple skin, and I will talk about how the yachts are constructed shortly, because that's very interesting. And it looked like it had been laid yesterday. So that has been a key for the survival of these yachts, is the timber that was used has been just a magnificent timber in terms of survival in salt water. Our yachts aren't hauled out for winter. They're left in the water. We don't have icing problems in New Zealand in the way that you do in other parts of the world. And also, so here we have an example of a kauri tree. They are a protected tree now. They were milled nearly to extinction, but we do have some of it, and it gives you some idea of the person there, the scale of some of these trees. They were truly magnificent beasts of the forest, and indeed many of the old houses in New Zealand are made from kauri. And I'm told even in San Francisco, many of the old houses that were built in San Francisco from around about the 1890s and the early 1900s were made from New Zealand kauri timber. So it's and the other part
when we were down there for the various cups, a lot of us brought small little objects of art or otherwise made of kauri. That was a big popular thing. Oh, bring us something from kauri wood.
Yes, well, I can tell you that a lot of that stuff comes out of swamps, and what they are now doing is excavating swamps for kauri, and this kauri has fallen over either through a natural disaster or otherwise, and have been preserved in these swamps for 30 to 40,000 years. And they extract this kauri out of swamps, and they cut it up and use it for everyday timber, and including some tourist objects and things. So, I mean, on Rainbow, we had a Samson post that was swamp kauri, and so we could legitimately claim that our yacht was in part 30,000 years old.
Great.
But it's swamp kauri, and it's and some of it's absolutely magnificent timber. Then the other big feature of why our yachts have survived is the construction technique, and it's a monocoque technique, or otherwise known as sort of triple skin. We don't have ribs in the way that, yes, this is the perfect picture to show. We don't have rib and plank in the way that you would have in North America or in Europe. So what they have done, it's a technique that was used to make lifeboats certainly in the Clyde, where the concept was taken by the early boat builders, particularly the Logans. And it's made
the Clyde in Scotland.
Yes. And so basically, the whole hull is made on a mold, and there are three skins essentially. Sometimes there are two, but mostly are three skins. And you have a double diagonal, so you have opposite diagonals, and then the outer skin would be a fore and aft skin, and the kauri plank would be the length of the yacht.
On the mold, now, were they steamed? How did they bend the wood? What was it?
Yes, they would have steamed it where it needed to be bent into position, and they are riveted together. So they use copper riveting throughout the hull, and then they laid the floors, which you can see there in the orange, the red lettered floors that have been added here, and then finally they add longitudinal stringers to help give it some additional strength. And so this technique of building this type of hull construction has been another huge reason why our fleet has survived. It's incredibly strong, and it's given us our fleet. So in many ways, if you see an old regatta picture taken, say, in Auckland in say 1900 or 1880s, not 1880s, more like 1890, late 1890s, we can recreate that picture with the same yachts. and sometimes with the descendants of the same people on board.
Alistair Murray says, I have a magnificent Cowrie dining table made from an old boat. Seats 14.
Wow.
And it's, again, Julia will remind us to go back and read the comments because
absolutely
there are a lot of good ones.
Many.
So what's happened, Tom, is that because of the Kauri timber, because of the way of construction, is that we have really a strongly intact fleet. Yes, sure, there's one or two yachts that have been lost through accident and wrecks and things, but largely our fleet that was made in the 1890s, early 1900s, up to the First World War and beyond survive, and they're in good condition, and some of them who aren't in good condition are eminently restorable. So what we do as part of the Classic Yacht Association, in addition to running events and supporting owners, is to encourage people to acquire a yacht that needs restoration and provide and assist them with restoration.
Okay, so if somebody wants to buy, so Julia, who's rich, she okay, I tease her, but she moves to New Zealand because it's the safest country in the world. So when World War III breaks out and there's nuclear warfare between the Russians and the Ukrainians and the Western Europeans and the Americans, and mutually assured destruction, and apparently you and some of the other very southern climes, probably Ted Ryman survives in South Africa, you survive, but if we go down there and buy, we get down there ahead of time and buy a boat. What's it cost to buy a boat? What's it cost to restore it?
Yeah, buying the boat isn't usually the more expensive part. The expensive part, of course, is the restoration. And like anywhere in the world, labour costs are what they are, and it can be pretty expensive depending on the nature of restoration that you do.
How much, Hamish? Order of magnitude. I mean, are we talking about $1 million? Are we talking about $500,000 to buy and restore?
Yeah, if you're talking a reasonable size yacht, say something up to 40, 50 feet, you're gonna have to spend something like $500,000 Kiwi to actually get it in good sailing condition.
Okay, who's this character you mentioned?
This is Robert Logan Senior. He's the boat builder from Scotland who brought his family out to New Zealand. A number of his yachts are still sailing around New Zealand. And that's a bit of advertising from a newspaper. And as you can see, he built launches, he built yachts, as well as just dinghies and other things. So they were a bit of a jack of all trades when it came to building boats. Their business, like all yacht builders and boat builders, changed with the advent of the reliable modern engine, whether they're diesel or petrol. And so people tended to gravitate away from yachts, or some did anyway, into launches. And that fundamentally changed the boat building, or the pleasure boat building business in New Zealand. The Logan brothers, who you've just seen, and this is an ad that they have, are his sons. So his sons basically opened a new business, and they are probably New Zealand's, well, they're not probably, they are New Zealand's Herreshoff or New Zealand's Watson or Fife.
So, that's interesting. I've heard, heard the name so much.
Yeah,
and this is a late 1800s boats by that family?
Yes, well, this is by the father of the family, and so this is Rona. She's, in fact, if you're looking for a boat to restore, she's available. She had a restoration in the 1980s, and she's in need of another restoration, so it'd be a perfect boat for you, Julia.
I would like that. That's exactly my speed.
No, seriously. You could sell everything, Julia. You could sell everything, move down there.
Yes.
Have a nice place in downtown Auckland, because you're a city dweller. Hamish, we'd install Julia on Waiheke out there in the, next door to Brad's house, Brad Butterworth's house. And she could be out on Waiheke Island, away from everything, just have to get out there by ferry boat or by her own private launch, and she could drink wine. She's not a big wine drinker. She doesn't like wine.
It would be a very good choice. and you could have Rona on a mooring just outside. So
yes.
That's right. You just ring the local crew and say, hey, it's a nice day. Let's go sailing.
Good idea.
Graham Sweeney wants to know, was the New Zealand meter yacht Prize, was that built by Charles Bailey?
Yes, Prize was built. She just recently had her 100th birthday, so I think she must have been built 1923, and she was a Bailey boat. She was built by some of the Bailey family guys. And she's not really a meter boat. She wasn't built to the meter rule. She is probably approximately in size an 8-meter boat, but I think she would struggle to actually measure formally as a meter boat. The Thompson family have owned it since the Second World War, and they're now into about the 3rd generation of the family sailing it.
Mm.
Waitangi.
So this is Waitangi. This is another Robert Logan Senior. This is one of the larger vessels of our fleet. It's run by a trust, a Classic Yacht Trust, and people pay to be on the crew. So they have a good, solid, regular crew of volunteers, and they pay $10-20 a race or event to go have the privilege of sailing.
They pay to go sail on the boat?
Yes, they do.
Julia, this is your kind of yachting, man. Huh? You don't have to even provide sandwiches. They'll pay you to come sail on your boat.
Yes. Well, I understand that.
Hamish,
totally.
when you say your fleet, your classic fleet, are we talking about 15 boats, 50 boats?
We're talking, in terms of the Classic Yacht Association, we have about 100 yachts as members. And in addition to that, we have about 25 classic launches as members. And people might ask what we define as a classic. Essentially, it has to be made from wood. We would accept steel, but they don't tend to survive. And generally, our rule for classic is it has to be built to a design that was established prior to 1950. After that, we get into what we call our modern classics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this one's not modern. This is another Logan.
Yes, it is. Now, this is one of the first, possibly the first Logan Brothers yacht. It's a 2.5 rater Gloriana. She's also in a trust, and this trust operates slightly differently where they, when I say lease, it's a lease whereby the payment is you look after the yacht and you get to campaign it for the season. And so that's Gloriana, very famous yacht, did extremely well when she first came out. This is a 5-rater, Moana.
What's a 5-rater? You said that there were raider wars. What's that all about?
Well, the British, before the international rule, had a series of...
The international rule being the meter boat rule.
Yes, the meter boat rule. And before the meter boat rule, the British had a number of classes and measurements. And they had raters, they had... I'm just trying to think of the other one. There's a series of measurements, but raters were known as it's basically a measurement rule. And you had 2.5 raters. It's a bit like a meter rule, but it's constructed differently. And this was a 5-rater. So the 2.5 and 5 raters were quite strong classes in New Zealand.
Thema?
This is Thelma. This looks like
there's no L in your... I can't blame my graphics department then.
No, you can't. No, I take responsibility for that one. Hey, this boat has a really interesting tale. So she dates from... she's slightly older than Rainbow by 1 year. And she was sailed by a conscientious objector during the last war. This is the Second World War, to Tahiti to avoid conscription. He was arrested in Tahiti, and the boat was then taken by the French authorities and added to the Free French Navy as a patrol vessel around the Tahitian waters.
Wow.
And then after the war, the American Navy purchased her as an officer recreation vessel and taken to Honolulu. And there she was in Honolulu for as part of the U.S. Navy for quite some time, 10, 15 years.
This boat was in the U.S. Navy?
It was, in the French Navy and the U.S. Navy. And then she was sold out of the Navy and ended up in San Francisco. And there she was there for many decades. And then through a number of us at the CYA encouraged an Australian gentleman to purchase her and restore her. And he then took her up to the Med to race. And then he decided to sell her, and a local benefactor in New Zealand, the late John Street, purchased her and brought her back to New Zealand and added it to the Classic Yacht Trust.
I didn't know that John Street owned that boat.
Well, he owned it through a trust that he established, and he's done a tremendous amount for classic yachting in New Zealand. And indeed, Waitangi, the black vessel you saw before, and Thelma are some of the main vessels in that Classic Yacht Trust.
What a grand guy he was.
Yes. No, he was a huge stalwart of New Zealand sailing, not just in the classics, but also another thing.
And speaking of Rainbow,
yeah, well, this is Rainbow, built 1898. She's famous because she's the first New Zealand yacht to win an international regatta. She won the Intercolonials in Sydney in 1900.
The Intercolonials, was that
Yes.
really a regatta, or did you just make that up?
No, it was really a regatta. It was because you remember Australia hadn't been federated at this time, so it was a collection of colonies.
I mean, come on, Hamish. Anybody that would name their Classic Yachting Association the CYA Association, I mean, excuse me, I would have named it something else just so they didn't think I was covering your ass. I mean, CYA Club?
You're the first to point that out.
Oh, come on. I'm not. What a fantastic, and I've seen pictures from various people, including you. Is this still the best boat in the fleet?
Well, I'm hopelessly biased here, of course, and I couldn't possibly answer without showing my biasness.
If I ask Brad Butterworth, who's a lot more
yes.
forthcoming than you.
Yes, he would say yes. So I'm these four of us who own the boat, which makes it handy on the pocket. So Brad Butterworth is a part owner with myself. David Glenn is an owner, a well-known New Zealand sailor, and also the very famous Chris Buzaid is also a partner in the vessel.
You let
as well.
Buzaid get into this?
Yes. Well, his family
Buzaid, as we call him.
Yeah, well, Chris's father used to own the vessel and campaign it during the 1950s.
No way.
Yes, and this is where how Chris learned to sail, on this vessel. So when he approached us a few years ago, because one of the partners, a family, the Dimmock family, who owned it for quite some time, decided to exit the partnership, Chris took the share, and so we're delighted to have him on board. So it's a bit of circular history.
Okay, so we got to tell the story. And so you must know Chris well. He sailed with you. He comes down there your summer, our winter, right? Because
yes, he does.
He and Lydia, his now wife Lydia Langston Buzaid, are living where? In Maine and Newport, Rhode Island, and maybe North Carolina and Florida. I can't remember where. So I'm driving. This is again during like the 03 Cup, and I'm driving along on what was the street there where all the bases were?
Halsey Street.
And I see the two of them, and I stop, and they hop in the van. I'm driving one of those vans that we had for the base club. And Buzaid, what do you do? Oh, well, we're here for the cup, and okay, great. And Lydia, what are you doing here? Well, I said, excuse me, are you guys an item? Because I knew Chris's ex-wife, of course, who was one of Jim Kilroy's daughters, or was Jim Kilroy's daughters. And he said, yeah, sort of. And Lydia said, what do you mean, sort of? They tell the story. I'm not telling anything out of school. And she says, what do you mean, sort of, Chris? Yes, we're an item, Tom. And I've known her longer than I've known Chris. I mean, I've known Chris and their son and the America's Cup. So I've known her quite a while, from Newport days and the Kilroy family days and so on. And you know how they met? Okay. I hope he's not watching, but next time you see Buzaid, you see Chris and Lydia, you ask them, is it true that you met on the county courthouse steps in Newport, Rhode Island? They sort of knew each other, and like two ships crossing at night, I think one was going in to file their divorce, and the other one was just coming out having filed and succeeded. And one of the others said, well, let's go have a coffee. And the rest, as they say, is history.
That's a lovely story.
She is a delight. He's a delight. Dear friends, I haven't seen them in quite a while, but you asked them that, Hamish.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I knew Lydia from Young America days.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. She was with Young America when you were their lawyer and showed up. I've told the story on this show many times. First time I met Hamish, Julia. I've come down there kind of late to be in the rules business, and Hamish, he's the New York Yacht Club's lawyer. Of course, I used to run the New York Sim, but I'm with Kayard, right?
Yes.
This is 2000, the 2000 campaign. So yeah. I show up and we're having one of these rules meetings, and I got my newly minted team clothes on. They're very nice and fresh and crispy. And Hamish shows up from the law offices of Bell and Gully, Was that your law firm, or you were a
Yes,
partner?
that's right. Yeah, Bell Gully.
And he looks like a lawyer from a white shoe law firm in New York City. I think that's why New York Yacht Club hired him, because he looked, like one of them. And he's got a pinstripe suit on. He's got wingtips on. He's got a white shirt. I think he even had the bloody tie on. And he's pulled taken his jacket off and maybe put a too small team. They give, you know how teams, they run out of clothing. It's not the right. And he's put some kind of a straight, at least looks like he's in a straight jacket. And he shows up to this rules thing, and I'm kind of sitting in the back, and I whoever's sitting next to me, I say, who the hell is that? They say, well, that's New York's lawyer. And then he goes off and he starts to sound like he's reasonably bright.
Isn't that?
Well, it was a surprise. You got some wet behind the ears rules advisor from New Zealand who's New York's lawyer. Mm-hmm. And we ended up doing battle with him. I won't say who won, but that's another point.
I won a few. You won a few. I think it was an even draw there. I first met you. You're holding court with all the rules advisors, and I went back to John Marshall and I said, "Who's this guy, Tom Eamon?" I think is. He says, I won't say what he said.
Well, Marshall was so mad. Marshall and I went to war during the San Diego Wars, and we were best mates. And then when he was running your syndicate, the New York Yacht Club syndicate, and those guys pulled some bad things, and I caught them doing it and stopped it. So he was not happy.
No.
Nor was his brother Jim. That's another issue. Lydia and I are still friends, and you and I became fast friends after that.
Yes.
Why was that?
Oh, I think we enjoyed the banter.
You think?
I think.
Yes, I think so.
Oh, Julie, I think I've told the story. One more story before we go back to Hamish's slides. Hamish and I, when we're doing this whole thing, and he's working for Alinghi now.
Yeah.
And he's always goes and works for my enemies.
Well,
right, Hamish?
With good.
He's working with Ernesto Borrelli.
Well, why spoil a bad thing?
And Alinghi, he's always working for my enemies. But hey, well, we've always friends, and we always get together. We even sort some things out, and then we make fun of each other, and we make fun of our bosses, and we carried on and had fun. And we even worked together here in 2013. We were on the same side in 2013, Hamish.
Yeah, we were briefly.
That was magical.
Briefly.
And we were in New York, one of these interminable court hearings. They were going on and on and on, and we'd gather, and I can't remember who all was there, but Hamish's boss was there, which was Ernesto's private lawyer. And I was staying at New York Yacht Club, and were you staying at the Sofitel?
Yes, the infamous Sofitel.
The No-Tel Sofitel, which is just down the street from New York, kind of between the Algonquin and New York Yacht Club. So long story short, Hamish and I, let's go have a coffee. So we go into his Sofitel and are having a coffee, and in walks his boss, who I had been negotiating with and had some ups and downs with. But, basically he and I got along okay, sort of. And afterwards he said to you, Hamish, what did he say? You want to say it publicly or not? What are you doing with the devil incarnate? What are you doing with that guy, Eamon? What, are you negotiating behind my back? Lucian Majmahan. I hope Lucian's watching. I quite like Lucian. All true, Hamish, or not?
Yeah, all true.
Let's get back to your slides before we get into trouble. Fabulous boat this is. God, we got some stories out of this slide.
I'm about to step on board here in a few hours' time and do it.
Okay, we better power through these so you can go yachting. That's much more important.
Yeah, this is Irangi, a little bit later than Rainbow. She was built to beat Rainbow by a famous New Zealander who established a library in Wellington, owned by a good friend of mine. Indeed, this one's for sale too, Julia. So
it's quite nice. It's about
look,
she's got
a modern rig on board. Mm-hmm. The owner often sails short-handed, or usually sails short-handed, and it suits him. But it's an ideal vessel to be returned back to Gatwick.
It has lifelines. It's perfect for you.
I know.
Look at that.
And it's short-handed, so I get to invite lots of strong young somebodies to help sail it, right?
So she's about 50 feet odd on deck, plus the bowsprit and she's got some accommodation below, but it's a bit like spending the weekend underneath the kitchen table. He doesn't have headroom.
Is this a sister ship to your Rainbow? Sure looks like it.
In broad terms, yes. She was built to the same rating rule, and she was Yeah. So this vessel itself here, this is Rafferty. She was built locally. And indeed, she was built for the same owner that owned Rainbow. He sold Rainbow and had this boat built when he moved to Australia. So this vessel, up until the end of the Second World War, had its racing career on Sydney Harbour, and basically was queen of the harbour in terms of race results. And then after the war, a local family called the Marlers purchased the vessel and sailed her across the Tasman, if you can believe it.
Really?
And this is the days before they had much in the way of modern electronics and navigation
and weather data.
And you can see how low freeboard she has, and to sail waters like the Tasman Sea is a pretty impressive
Hamish,
feat.
what are the sails made of?
The sails traditionally originally they were cotton, of course, but nobody in their right mind would have cotton sails these days. So what we use is a Dacron, but it's called a classic cloth, and so it's coloured to make it look like old cotton sails, and they are often cut in a manner of the traditional classic yachting, classic yacht sails as well.
The miter cut jib, that was called a miter cut back in the day. David James saying those sails are beautiful. J. Frederick Bland, Boomer Bland, is it called Oceana cloth?
Look, there are different names for different manufacturers of the cloth that they have, and I'm rather proud to say that my first classic yacht, a boat called Little Jim, that was built in 1934. I introduced the classic cloth into New Zealand. I was the first to bring this. It's a somewhat sort of light tan cloth, and everybody assumed that I had mylar sails. and I was regularly pulled up at the yacht club saying, "Oh, you've done a dreadful thing to that lovely old vessel by putting mylar sails on it." I had to explain to until I almost got deaf that no, these aren't mylar sails. They are Dacron made to look like old cotton.
Well, they sure do. They're beautiful.
This is Araki. Otherwise, up until about 1938, she was the queen of Auckland Harbour. She's a much bigger yacht. She's about 52 in deck length, 54 perhaps deck length, a lot more beamier than Rainbow. Very powerful yacht, and she was owned by the Wilson family for many, many years, and the Littler family after that. And she's now been purchased by one of the members of the Classic Yacht Association and given a full restoration a few years ago. Great yacht, and a very strong yacht. This
looks positively modern. I mean, this is a boat with winches. This is after winches.
Yeah, this is Little Jim. This is my first yacht, and she was made in 1934. And if you look at the lack of freeboard there as we're on port tack, she was criticised at the time as being somewhat ungainly with having too much freeboard, if you can believe it.
Oh,
too much.
Oh, there's almost not there.
Yes, but no, I bought her and restored her during the 1990s, and she was a lovely yacht, and I do miss her. Tarawera, again, she's like Little Jim. She's a slightly bigger sister to Little Jim, much the same sort of era. These Little Jim and Tarawera were the boats that were sort of kicked off the rebuilding of keel yachts in New Zealand after a bit of a hiatus after the First World War.
What is below in all these boats? Is there any accommodation? Is it just
normally there's some bunks below, pretty plain. Usually, there might be a very modest galley. When I say very modest, it's very modest and usually hidden behind panels and things.
A propane stove, and that's it.
Yeah, and there'll be a forepeak, and there'll be sail storage in the forepeak, maybe a couple of fold-down pipe berths, and behind there'll be some quarter berths as well. But
I know you're a coffee drinker, but were these all tea drinkers in their day? How's that for a question, Julia?
Tea would have been the main drink.
Classic wooden yachts are great to sail, but are really maintenance intensive. You have to, indeed, love them to enjoy. By the way, Hamish, in case I forget, there is a wooden boat festival at my other favorite yacht club, at the Balboa Yacht Club down in Newport Beach. And it's a weekend-long festival. I think it's closed to the yacht club members only for a day, and I think maybe it's only a day-long festival because it kind of really takes over the whole club. But sometime we got to get you up to Balboa Yacht Club for the Wooden Boat Festival in Newport Beach. It's a big deal. Fantastic.
Love to do it.
Fantastic.
Love to do it.
We'll get you up for that. The Bailey family?
Yeah, this is the Bailey family. This is a painting of their works that were in central Auckland. And, they were a strong family. They were, erstwhile competitors to the Logans. This is Viking, one of their larger pleasure yachts that were built. She's still around in Auckland.
Is this a painting? Is this a painting from the 1890? When is this? Is a painting? It's not a photo.
No, this is a relatively modern painting based on an old photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Rangi in the background?
Yes, that's Rangitoto there in the background, and that's North Head there. You can see just in.
So okay. Yeah. Okay. There is the lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
There's Natera. She was fully and religiously restored back to original, including laid decks by a good friend of mine, Steve Horsley. He's in fact on a second restoration of her at the moment, and a lovely example of Bailey's work.
Somebody asked, "Are all these boats for sale?" You
is there a reason
that.
not all of them are for
No,
sale?
they're not all for sale. Not by any stretch, but they tend to have a life cycle in the sense of owner gets them, restores them, enjoys them, and then often moves on to another project. So this is another restoration as part of one of the Classic Yacht Trusts as well, Ida. She was brought back from Australia and given a full restoration. And she's a magnificent vessel.
Okay,
And
so you're a lawyer. How does the trust work? So somebody forms a trust. They can make contributions to the trust, which are tax favorable somehow?
No, we don't have any particular tax rules with them at all. There's no tax advantages. The trusts then own the yachts, and they're set up for long-term preservation. That's the intention.
Okay, well, Julia's not going to go be a classic yacht owner down there then. She's always looking for tax advantages. Right, Julia?
Oh, yes. I have so much to worry about.
Okay, Hamish, I don't want to hold you up. We got a few more slides to go, but power us through these if you would, please.
Yeah, I just grabbed an example of some of our classic launch fleets. So after about 1900, as marine engines became more reliable, the orders for these boat builders to build pleasure yachts or pleasure launches became stronger.
And by launch, you mean powerboat?
Yeah, powerboat. And so this is an example of one of our beautiful fleet of launches. And as you can see, this is being built by the Bailey and Lowe. And traditionally, they were sort of started off as hulls with yacht hulls with engines, and slowly they began to develop their own unique shape.
Yeah, it almost looks like it's just had its mast taken out.
It does.
Right forward of that forward cabin.
Yeah. This is Prize that one of the Fosies mentioned earlier. She just had her 100th birthday, and owned by the Thompson family. She was called. She's an interesting story about Prize. She was called Prize because a New Zealand sailor who joined the Royal Navy in the First World War, he won a Victoria Cross, and he was on what's known as a Q ship, and they were disguised armed vessels, so they would encourage U-boats to come close to attack and sink the yacht. And when the U-boat was close enough, they'd suddenly drop all these disguises and bulkheads, and they would then blow up. They would then shell the U-boat and hopefully sink it. Anyway, he won a Victoria Cross by sinking a U-boat in very adverse conditions and circumstances. And
from a sailboat?
Yeah, it was a sailboat. It was
disguised as
a commercial vessel, and this yacht prize that he won the Victoria Cross on, not this boat, but the boat prize that it was called Prize because it was the first German vessel taken at the outbreak of the war. So it became HMS Prize, and it was on that vessel that he won his Victoria Cross, and the vessel was sunk in the course of the action. And this that became a very famous nautical story in New Zealand. And in honor of that story, this yacht, when it was launched, was named Prize in its honor. Ranger, probably the queen of Auckland Harbour from the 1938 through until the 60s. And indeed, there was a large, long list of vessels that were designed and built to try and beat Ranger. She was built and owned and raced by a waterside worker, and it was a magnificent vessel. She was derived from a Nud Remmers design, and amateur built and amateur sailed, and it was really a bit of a legend in Auckland and New Zealand sailing terms.
The Cover Your Ass Association. Cover Your Ass of New Zealand. I'd like to join that just for the name.
Yeah, well, we formed this in the mid-1990s, and old boats were not well recognised or catered for, and it's really, some friends and myself formed it. It's taken off, and none of us are heavily involved in it, but obviously we lend a hand from time to time. But essentially, it's giving a voice to and a place for old boats and people who like old boats. And
what is antiquity? When I was kind of editing your slides last night, touching them up a bit, what is antiquity legal protection?
Well,
that sounds like something that Julia and I would get. We'd go to our lawyer and say, we want some antiquity legal protection.
And
well,
we qualify.
Huh? You probably now qualify.
We are, for sure.
I am, for sure.
So when the first America's Cup was coming around, our concern was that our classic yacht fleet was very cheap by international standards. And the concern was that we could lose a lot of our classic yacht fleet to overseas purchases. And indeed, it did prove to be the case that there were many attempts to buy some of these vessels and take them offshore. But what I did is I contacted the government and brought their understanding of the need to protect the yachts and through this antiquity legislation. And so what happened, in fact, after we confirmed this with the government, we had a unlawful export of the yacht Iorangi, which we saw earlier, the sister ship of Rainbow. And we arranged through the New Zealand government to have her arrested when she turned up on a freighter in Sydney.
Arrested?
Arrested. And she was, then negotiations took place between the owner to have her returned to New Zealand, which she eventually did, and then underwent a restoration. So it's we had a really good opportunity to use as an example to people that you can't smuggle our yachts out of the country without consequences.
I think he would have us arrested if we showed up at the Auckland airport.
Yeah.
Deported under his antiquity legal protection program. That's also to keep old people out.
Yes.
And old poor people, at least in my case, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But the important thing, Tom, is that these yachts, like a lot of antiquities, have a context. And if you take them out of their context, they lose something. And certainly the land of their birth loses something as well. And so they're far better to be kept in the place where their history has been created. And you can extrapolate that into the arguments over the Elgin marbles, for example, and many other antiquities that either have been returned or not returned.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't talk about it. I thought you were a political conservative, Hamish. I didn't know you were in favor of government protection and over-regulation and arresting yachts when they get to Sydney because of antiquity protection. Holy cow.
No.
I know. I like to tease him. And the Wooden Boat Festival?
Yeah, we held that. It was held here for the first time. It's another one due in 26, an on-water one. And it was a spectacular success. We had crowds and crowds of people coming down. It's the one thing about old boats.
When it says February, March, which was in your slide, is that over a 2-month period? How long does that go on?
No,
or it just moves.
No, it's kind of moves a little bit exactly what week it is. It's generally the end of February, beginning of March. 26th there is when the next on-water one's going to be held. And, if anyone is really interested in classic yachts and they are going to be down in this part of the world at that time, it's worth checking out.
Julia, we ought to put Rusty Arias at St. Francis in touch with Hamish. Remind me to do that.
Okay.
Because he's keeps buying these. I got to get you up to the Stag Cruise, Hamish, to meet him. David James would know this guy. Wooden Boat Show here is the day after tomorrow at the Corinthian Yacht Club. But this guy, Rusty Arias, who is a longtime political active guy and from a family with an affluent family, he buys these big Stevens motor yachts here, what you would call launches that were built here in the Delta over the years, restores them fabulously.
Oh, yes. But they were built fabulously, too.
And then keeps one down, and I think in SoCal and in Newport Beach, and he keeps one up here. We'll put you in touch. Great stuff. There's some great links here from the various FOSI chiming in. And Hamish, I think we got 2 more slides, the Q&A slide. We've been more or less, have we, Julia, done okay on questions?
Oh, I'm sure. I just can't help but say now, be sure to read the notes. And having read the notes, you develop more questions, and more answers. It lots of good points and lots of good answers in the notes.
Hamish, what one thing have you not told us? Come on, a real, some real inside skinny. What are you and Brad doing with Rainbow that we don't know about that he would be upset if you told us?
Well, I can say that both Brad and Chris really enjoy sailing by seat of the pants. There's no instrumentation on the boat. There's no electronics. Look, when we're sailing a bit close to the island, I might pull out my phone and check out the charts. but that's the extent of it. There's no wind instruments or anything like that. It's genuine, old-fashioned seat of the pants sailing, and it's great. It's really, really nice. And the motion on these boats to sail them is quite different than a modern yacht, and they are just such a pleasure to sail. They are absolutely magnificent. If you ever get the chance to sail on an old wooden boat, please don't pass it up, because I think it's an experience that everyone should experience in their lifetime, particularly the sailing community.
Julia, you see this question from Chris Exley that we missed earlier on. He's saying what influence? He sounds a little perturbed. Come on, Chris. What influence did the design of America have on NZ yacht design, the Yacht America?
Look, only in a derivative sense. I mean, you're talking about the 1850s, 1860s. New Zealand really was still in its very early colonial days at that stage, and they were then only really racing workboats, whether it's a fishing boat or a tender of some sort. So, in New Zealand's sense, that not any direct relevance at all, but derived in the sense that it influenced British designs, which in turn later on influenced New Zealand designs. I mean, the Logans and the Baileys, they would have been subscribers to the same traditional old Victorian yachting magazines that we still see in our museums and our libraries. And they picked up on the latest designs. And to be honest with you, they cribbed them and modified them as they saw fit for local conditions.
Mm-hmm. Does the CYA take kids out sailing?
Yes, we do. We're always looking for crew, and what we're keen to do, we are looking to partner with yacht clubs so they can take their youth program and put them on our classic yachts and be part of a yacht for the season. So they learn some of the old skills, and let's face it, the skills they learn on a modern boat are just as applicable to an old boat, even though we may have to teach them how to set a topsail or some other traditional skills. Mm-hmm. And the experience we have of taking people out, it's 100% positive, and they enjoy it. They feel a part of the yacht's history, and they are forever associated with that yacht for the rest of their lives. I've sailed on Rainbow, I'm part of the Rainbow team, or I've sailed on Araki, and it's a part of my life. I took a great deal of pleasure where I took the grandsons of some of the original sailors on Little Jim for a couple of seasons, and I bump into them in the street. They've grown up now with families, and they both say that it was a formative part of their growing up and their education, of spending a few seasons with older guys like us sailing on these yachts.
Sounds like the young sailor in Newport, Rhode Island, who was crewing with Leslie and me on our J24, a really good kid, a really good sailor, great family. And he said, well, can I have the combination to the hatch so the boat was tied up at a dock on Goat Island. I said, well, why do you want that? He said, well, I'd like he's a high schooler, I guess.
Yeah.
He said, well, the boat's getting a little stanky down below, and maybe I'll go clean it up. I said, that's really cool. He was a good racer. He was part of the.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out he needed a place to take his girlfriend. I wonder it was stanky down below. So yeah, the kids are great. Okay, one disappointing thing about many junior programs is that they would be lost on a classic. David James says. And another point here, Morris Stevens says there is nothing like sailing a wooden boat. And Clayton Embley saying, he's a bourbon drinker, by the way. Hamish, you'd like Clayton Embley. No instruments, no electronics, sign me up.
That's how I started sailing, with no instruments and no. There were sometimes.
Julia,
electronics on boats, but they never worked.
It was so long ago that you started sailing. Huh?
Yeah. Well, not so long.
You were sailing with Egyptian cotton sails. Actually, I tell you what, that's not funny because I started sailing. My first boat had Egyptian cotton sails too, and you'd capsized, and they'd get wet and then they'd shrink.
But you were sailing on too small a boat. You would.
Well, yeah, well, they'd get heavy too. Hamish, that's terrific. Thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. And I've got one more segment if you can stay. What time are you yachting? It's now, what time is it in Auckland?
He's late.
It's 10:18 there.
10 minutes. I can stay a bit longer.
Okay, 10 minutes. We got one segment for you to opine on, you and Julia, and that is This Day in History. Hamish, what happened on this day in history, the 21st of June? I know you're a history buff. I know you're also a particular fan of this lady. You probably know exactly what happened on the 21st of June, 1887. Julia, before Hamish opines, I'll bet you Hamish knows.
I can tell you one thing. It's her 5 great-grandson's birthday today.
Really?
Yes.
This lady about whom we are speaking?
Yes, it is.
So what happened on this date in 1887?
Oh, the Queen Victoria.
That is Her Majesty Queen Victoria of Great Britain, who lived from 1819 to 1901. She was the Queen of the United Kingdom, as we all know, and Ireland from the 20th of June, 1837 until her death in 1901. She inherited the throne at the age of 18 and became a national icon, as you again all know. Her reign of 63 years and 7 months was longer than that of any other British monarch before her, until overtaken by her great-great-granddaughter, Elizabeth II, in 2015. Her reign is known as the Victorian era, widely. She's so famous, and of course she and her, at least her husband, the Prince Albert, arguably was a cause of what, Hamish?
The great expansion of the empire.
And?
Brought about by the Bible, whiskey, and the Martini Henry, followed by the Maxim gun.
And? The Great Exhibition?
Yes, of course, the Great Exhibition of 1851, leading us to the America's Cup.
Yep.
And sailing's greatest trophy.
So then what happened on this day in history?
It was a jubilee. It was a jubilee here of a accession to the throne.
It was indeed. It
and
was
indeed,
her golden jubilee.
And I should say it's also the birthday of Prince William, the king in waiting, shall we say.
Ah.
This is William, so the Crown Prince.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is he, do you have Prince Albert in a can? No, David James, we don't. Somebody always asks that on this show.
I know.
That's indeed what happened on this day in history in 1887. Her golden jubilee. So what, 50 years, right?
Indeed. And she went on to celebrate her diamond jubilee a few years later.
Unbelievable. Hamish, go yachting. Unless you want to talk about the America's Cup, I have a very brief America's Cup segment.
Look, I better go sailing, I think. I don't want to hold the guys up, and nothing's worse than being on a rush at the start line.
Okay. Well, don't rush at the start line. Say, are you racing?
Yes, we are. Yep, Winter Series.
Bouzide's not there, though.
No. He'll be either in North America or Europe somewhere sailing. And so it'll just be myself and David Glenn as the owners on the boat, but we have a good, solid crew, and hopefully have a bit of fun. Give the old girl a bit of airing out.
Great. Thank you for all your wisdom and little tales today.
And expertise. Indeed. Yes. Alistair Murray's giving applause. True that, Clark. And we appreciate it very much, Hamish. We'll see you sometime sooner than later, I hope, but apparently not in Barcelona.
Well, we'll wait and see on Barcelona. I have a couple of invitations, but to be honest with you, it's a long way. And as we were saying earlier, before we hooked up on the show, is that you stay in Barcelona and you end up watching it on a TV set in Barcelona, which you may as well watch in Auckland.
Classic show, fantastic slides. Joe Holtzman summed it up in 4 words. Thank you, sir.
You're most welcome. And,
okay.
And good afternoon to you both, and happy sailing. Sail fast, sail well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye all.
Mr. Dr. Hamish, I knew when he was Mr. Hamish Ross, Counselor Hamish Ross, and now, of course, Dr. Hamish Ross, a Juris Doctorate.
Yes.
And more.
Yes, I just love his command of facts and knowledge.
Well, Stingray called him an encyclopedia.
Yes. Well, he's nicer than an encyclopedia.
What is this? Something they're going on about Prince Albert, I think, the pipe tobacco, but that's another issue. Okay, what's going on in the America's Cup? I only got Julie, we're 2 hours and 23 minutes
I know.
into this show. And, usually we have to, in the Bohemian Club here in San Francisco, those shows are only 52 minutes long. That's called the Bohemian Hour. You know why?
Right. Yes.
So the gentleman can go take a pee, especially at the advanced age.
Yes.
I keep my legs well and truly crossed here for I'm fine. Julia, AC37 Cup Day. I'm going to do a poll. We haven't done a FOSI poll in a while.
No.
But I had this on my Facebook page the other day, and I just put it up as my cover photo. I didn't say anything about it. And it got more comments, more feedback from people. This obviously is Sir Ben Ainsley's boat and Sir Jim Ratcliffe's boat, Ineos Britannia in Barcelona. That is, the skeg, if nothing else, is very strange looking. The rudder is rather different than the other boats. And, if you were back in 1851 when America showed up and the Brits said, well, if she is, right, we're wrong when we've been wrong because America was so radically different. And maybe this boat is right, but then maybe it's not, because I tell you, the comments, most of you on my Facebook page said, and I said in the show notes, a beauty or a beast? Or is it just plain fugly? Mm-hmm. If Britannia is right, everyone else is wrong, Ed Worley is saying. Okay, the FOSI poll, is she right or wrong? What do you think? I mean, it is.
Yeah, it looks better than some of the other ones.
You think?
But not as beautiful as the Italians are.
Well, you just like the paint, the silver, and you like.
I like the lines.
You like the bloody. You like Prada.
I do.
Ugly is fast, Pedro Foiling Sailor is saying. Mary Longpree. Hi, Mary. She's got a good eye.
Yeah.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? I'm going to go with fugly. Clark Chapin says. Clayton Embley agrees. It looks like this is the best comment. You see this? Mary Longpree says it looks like a dead water bug. Oh, my goodness. Mm-hmm. A dead water bug, Julia.
Well, it does sort of.
Exley says wrong. James says wrong. DFL wrong. J. Frederick Bland is saying. Morris Stevens, it looks like a giant bug. Fugly, Rob Fry. Now, Rob Fry's in Auckland, and he's very knowledgeable, as are most of the FOSI on here. Looks like a yacht designed by car engineers. Clark Chapin and Joe Holtzman, what do you think of that?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Fugly, but it could be fast, Mr. President, Alistair Murray is saying.
Mm-hmm.
The paint job disguises her true lines. Graham Sweeney quite likes the boat, I know from other comments. We'll see. Beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes all the way to the keel. That's a new quote from Clark Chapin.
Oh.
She is snake bit. Time for Ben to move on, Julie Aaron says. stumbled across this amazing video opinion about Dalton's choice to not fly his boat to Barcelona. Okay, well, we'll read that later on.
Mm.
And then the whole comment that Ted Turner is famous for making about even turds are tapered at both ends, that he made that comment to the Brit Chance, the yacht designer, Britton Chance, who thereafter designed that boat famously, slow boat Mariner, that was red, first of all, and it's the back of its bustle was squared off. And
Yes.
Ted Turner says, well, even a turd is pointed at both ends.
Right.
And poor old Brit Chance was forever afterward ever known as Shitty Britty.
Oh, poor guy.
Poor guy. Pretty is usually fast. Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Mary does have the winning description by far. I agree. What did Mary say? Not Mary. Mary had a little lamb. Britannia looks like a dead water bug.
Yeah.
Okay, enough. I think that the hull is only a wind obstruction. New York Yacht Club's American Magic could be onto something. It is weird looking. What is not weird is Magnus's book, There Is No Second. It's getting rave reviews from everybody who's read it, including now Julia. You've read a good bit of it.
Yep.
I've actually delved into it now, and I can tell you it's a great read.
It is.
It's long, and it's dense, but
I can't skim it because I get stuck in the details and want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, that gets us to the last leg. Thankfully, on a 2-hour and almost 30-minute show, and I have a quick video. Speaking of classic yachts, I couldn't help but end the show with something about the 12s that are going on, the 12-meter Worlds. This is day 4, their video from day 4, which I think is today. I think tomorrow's day 5 and the 5th and final day. But here it is anyway. It's a 4.5-minute or so video, maybe not even that long, and a fabulous video at that. It is indeed a beautiful video and a nice way to wrap up the show. And we've had this fantastic Classic Yachts presentation by Dr. Hamish Ross. That yacht club is in France. That video was shot by the celebrated, my dear friend, Gilles Martin Raget. How do you pronounce that yacht club? Porqueles? Porquel in French. You're the francophone. You're the
I
French
know.
speaker.
I should be able to.
Somebody will know, and I'm sorry that we don't know how to pronounce that. But what a fabulous video. That's yacht racing at its best. Classic. That video, this video, is sailboat racing in Capsmere. Longpree is saying, beautiful
Right.
video, Graham Sweeney, Clayt Embley, Ed Worley, and on. David James said he would buy beers for whoever made that video.
Yes.
Good point, David. Good stuff. Good video. Thanks again to Hamish for a wonderful presentation. I knew the show would run long, Julia, so I only put in one Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Only one. It's very simple and it's very clean. So I didn't want you to have to, after this long show, to have to get your finger going.
All right.
I didn't want to wear you out.
No.
Okay. So here it is. Courtesy of Joe Holtzman, an ad in a Columbus, Ohio. Everybody knows how much we from Michigan, we Michiganders love Columbus, Ohio, home of our rival Ohio State University. It's an ad in the Columbus, Ohio for Ohio State fans. Get 50% off or half price, whichever is less. It's a real ad. We dedicate that not to Julie Ahrens because she lives in Cleveland, Ohio. But she's not a big fan of Ohio State either. But even though I think she or her husband went there. Thank you for that ad, Joe Holtzman, who was born in Toledo, Ohio, in that territory, that dispute. Did you know there's still a border war technically between Ohio and Michigan? I don't think it's been for a little strip of land just in the southern part of southeastern corner of Michigan, the northern kind of central part of Ohio. It's been going on for years. Nobody cares, including me. Okay, that's it for us. That gets us to the finish line. Julia, you like to say?
There's never been a better show to forward to anybody who's listening.
Indeed.
And sailing.
By liking, following, and sharing. And you can leave your comments are welcome to, even in replay. And we love all of you who support us, especially not only the Fozy and the regulars, but those of you who are patrons via patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated, and to all who gave us video, audio, and images for this longish show. Julia, final thoughts?
It's just another example of how broad and breathtaking sailing can be.
Exactly. And how smart some people are, like Dr. Hamish Ross. And
oh, gosh, yes.
all of our foes that are on here. Not only do they Google well, they're quick with their fingers, but they have so much information at the tips of their proverbial tongues.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Shows ever and ever and ever. Thank you, Commodore Holtzman. Thank you, everybody else. Have a great weekend, Alistair. You're already into it down there where it's what? 8:30 in Melbourne, if he's in Melbourne. In Australia. All the rest of you, we hope you have a great rest of your weekend, wherever in the world you are. And in the meantime, we'll see you Tuesday, same time, same channel. Sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.